All right. Thank you, everyone. Uh, Good to see you, Lena. Welcome, the Red Seraph. Uh, Hello, and welcome to another video version of my Substack essays, where I read the piece live aloud to you if you're on Twitch, or read to you it in a video on demand format if you're watching later on YouTube. And of course, we are live here with the Twitch chat, so we'll be chatting about all kinds of bullshit as well as the actual topic at hand during the stream. This lovely day's topic is low or no empathy autistics and how we get by in a world where magically intuiting what feelings somebody has by looking at them is given massive, massive social priority and moral priority, and is just considered a fundamental aspect of being a human being by a lot of people, which can really suck and doesn't really serve its purpose of like fostering human connection and encouraging people to like do pro-social things in the way that even like lots of non-autistic people think that it does. But we'll dive into it. How's everybody doing this afternoon? Happy lunchtime, everyone. Has everybody got little snack, little treat? I know some of you are in Europe, and so it's much later, but hopefully you have a snack too, or are recently nourished. I once again have some Dunkin' Donuts bullshit beside me because that is a big part of my work from home routine. Just like Joe, the anime sicko, I have to take my little walk outside early in the day so that I don't feel crazy. And having the external goal of picking up some kind of decaf coffee or like little breakfast sandwich really keeps me going. And oh my goodness, it is really nice out here in Chicago. It's that kind of crystal clear, fresh, crisp fall day. You know how the sky is just less hazy, like a bright sunny fall day just hits completely differently from a bright sunny summer day because there's just none of that humidity and haze. The air is cool. The sky is just a crisp, like oceanic blue, and it's kind of set off with the changing leaves. It's just gorgeous. And oh my god, I'm like overheating for some reason today. So feeling that cold air on my skin was a fucking delight. Welcome, Eternity Box. Hello, good to see ya. How's everybody doing? I am at a stage of my hair growing out journey. I learned how to use gel, everyone. Like a very modest amount. I got this like very low hold gel, and I'm like combing the sides of my hair back so it's not um so it has a little shape so it's not too like mushroomy. um it's getting really long, um especially in the back. Thank you, the Red Seraph. I'm happy with it. I feel like I am finally past the most horrible of the awkward stages of growing your hair out. And I asked friend of the show, Jersey Noah's boyfriend, Remy, for advice about slicking my hair back because his boyfriend, Remy, always has like this really great, like kind of wet look, um, like combed back hairstyle, which I have always really loved. And I thought that I would have to have like really crunchy hair covered in gel to do it, but I found this gel that is like this like soft texture gel, so like my hair actually still feels like touchable rather than crunchy and like soft. And you just like slick it back, dampen your hair a little bit, comb it back how you like it, put some of the shit on it, and then it lasts pretty much all day. um Bromantics. Oh, hello, Bromantics. Oh, I hope you are coping as best you can in this Taylor Swift. What is it? T11 release cycle. Is it T11? Is it the 11th album? I think that's right. Um, very glad to see you here. Uh, Gel is so difficult, but you're slaying. Thank you. Yeah, I'm especially happy with how this side looks. This side is a little bit more, it's just not showing quite as well, but like it's slicked back, it's out of the way. When I wake up in the morning, I just have this puffy, like straight fluffy thing that looks horrible and mushroomy. I sent a a selfie to this girl that I was flirting with, and she said my hair looked like that. I looked like Nathan for you, that I looked like Nathan Fielder, which could not be more dysphoric in that way that something that is slightly too accurate but not desired can wound you. So this is a much better look than, with all due respect, Nathan Fielder's hair is not, it's not it. So yeah, and this was from someone that I was flirting with. But I'm gonna not hold it against her because otherwise we were talking a very strong CNC detransition kink, fucked up, depraved kind of game, and that was very lovely. But like, damn, you're gonna try to actually humiliate me, telling me I have Nathan Fielder's hair? Please, no. I'm going for fucking Paco Amoroso over here, please. Or Lady Gaga in like what is it? Applause, the Applause video. That like slick back look. I love that look. Devastating. Hello, John Prime. Oh, it's Cycle. It's Taylor Swift 12. Oh, my bad. You can see I'm trying to go back in time. Oh, thank you for the follow, John Prime. Welcome to the streams. We have a fun time around here, and we get really analytical with it. To be fair, many people think Nathan Fielder is sexy. I mean, he's got that autism swag, right? And I guess I have not seen that much of him like in motion. Like, I have not actually watched Nathan For You or the rehearsal, and I know probably a lot of people would think that I should, but I just don't watch that many TV shows. But I know it's very autism. I know he even talks about figuring out that he's autistic potentially in the second season of the rehearsal, and he features friend of the show Jesse Meadows writing on sluggish.substack about him being autistic, which is very fucking cool. But I just have not gotten around to watching any of that shit. But yeah, dysphoria brainforms, it really should have kind of told me something all along, that every single time someone who was trying to be affirming told me that I looked like a particular man, it enraged me and made me feel gross. Like, that was triggering for a bunch of reasons. So, oopsie. Oh, well, we're figuring it out. Welcome, Medkip. Good to see ya. John Prime, I'm Joni Prime, Stinko Shart anarchist on Tumblr. I don't know if I follow you yet. With a name like that, I need to. Welcome. Thank you for coming by and hanging out. These streams are a really fun time. The last one, the How to Find a Dom stream, that's like 4 hours, was like, we were all really like cooking with gas and coming up with some seriously elevated ideas about disability and kink, and it was amazing. And there's a Discord server for people who watch these streams, so if you like the conversations, it's lots of disabled people who love to craft, NB, trans femme, trans mask, trans androgynous, gender fucky, age regressor, puppy dogs on the floor. Everybody's here, and it's a really nice, dare I say, community. Like, not as much of a like fandom gross parasocial thing. Like, it's people who consistently talk to each other about cool shit, and I pop in from time to time, but I also am not the moderator, which is good. Chicago, hello, good to see you. I finally returned your Instagram messages, so hopefully you saw that. Thank you for regaling me with that. Oh, Medkit said, happy to be here, been watching VODs but haven't caught a stream in a hot minute. Yeah, I think the lunchtime slot generally works pretty well and hits that sweet spot of like still being semi-accessible to European people, but yeah, glad you could make it. And I love you're watching it on the TV. When I see pictures of the stream on a TV, it's like, okay, this is real. And I kind of feels that way when it like pops up on my own like YouTube feed too. Like, we're a small scrappy little channel, but it's nice. It's a nice crew. We are mutuals. Okay, good. I'm glad. Thank you, Johnny Prime. Air gender, welcome. Puppy dogs on the floor, rise up. Puppy dogs, creatures, things, people who should be in cages, who need cages medically, for their sleep hygiene. Love it. Hi, autism. Oh my God, it's like the hi gay, hi autism. Welcome, face nemesis. Orange leaves are outside. It's autism. Uh, Earlier this week it was like 80 degrees and I was sweating my ass off. And then today it's crisp and clear and blue and orange and like one bit of like one gust of wind and like a little bit of rain, and now all those tiny little like really thin orange leaves off the trees. If you know Chicago, they're like all in the middle of the road, and it's like it's over. Like it's so Jover already for us. But I don't know about y'all. I have my fall plans coming together. My fall sanity plans. Share yours in the chat as well. I needed to replace my couch because my couch was far too small. It can hold one or two people and it can hold like a plus size person, but if you're going to be getting like any amount of cuddly with anyone of any size, I need a much bigger couch. So I'm getting a new couch. I got a Steam Deck. I've been playing Cyberpunk 2077. I am ready for my like hermiting inside in the winter and giving myself like gaming and reading projects to catch up on to make winter not depressing. So if you are also a certified winter hater, sun worshiper, let me know what your winter cope this year is going to be. Romantic says, I'm usually at work or running around during streams, so only briefly tune in, but today I'm free, so happy to properly tune in this time. That's wonderful. That means we're going to have to talk a little bit more about the life of a showgirl. Can y'all bear with me for a second? Who has listened to Life of a Showgirl? I have listened to it twice through. One time in the bath, in the dark, which is very appropriate, and yesterday also on a bike ride. I would say normally pop albums, they don't impress me at first, and then they kind of grow in how much I like them and gain earworm potential. That's certainly what happens to me with every Lady Gaga release. I always think, oh, it's over. She fell off. This sucks. I'm not feeling it. And then by the third time I've listened to it, I'm like, Stephanie still got it. I'm obsessed. She's me. I say wearing a Chromatica shirt. But I would say that I liked the sonics of Life of a Showgirl on the first listen when I was like relaxing in the bath in the dark and not listening to every lyric super closely, just latching onto what jumped out at me, and listening to it in more depth yesterday while working out. I was like, some of this is a little rough, girlies. It's a little rough. But there's still some tracks I do like, and I unfortunately do have actually Romantic stuck in my head right now. 1634786291764 says, thank you so much for writing this piece. It came at the perfect time for me. Thank you so much for saying that and for being here. I hope you'll feel encouraged to share more as we dive into this piece. There was quite a few comments on the Substack from people saying that they went into reading the piece thinking of themselves as a high empathy autistic, and then they realized they actually are a low empathy autistic, which I found very interesting. So I'm glad it has been relatable to people. I think it's something that I know it's something that a lot of people have had on their mind ever since Charlie Kirk's throat getting ocean gated, because that aroused a lot of conversations again about the importance of empathy from people on the left, which I try not to be too pedantic about that, because I do know that a lot of times when people say empathy, what they really mean in a political context is compassion or pro-sociality. And so I know that they're not necessarily saying someone who doesn't feel empathy is a bad person. However, I know it does come with a lot of assumptions when people use empathy in that way, or assume that it's a necessity to participating in human relationships. So I was glad to talk about it some more. Gremlin said, it's spring here now. I'm not ready to come out of hibernation yet. Oh, you're a winter autistic. And I assume that means you're maybe Australian, Aotearoan, something like that. Southern Hemisphere, homie. Romantic said, I hated it at first, but it grew on me so much. I'm the same about Lady Gaga. The Tortured Poets department grew on me really quick. I remember the day that it came out, everyone, even like a lot of Swifties, were having to cope by saying that it was AI generated and not the actual album. and then it grew on people. And I really liked how maximalist and unhinged that one was. I liked a lot of Midnights, even though the production was kind of ass. Shout out to Annoying Aries, Jack Antonoff. Um, I really loved Folkmore, both of those albums. I really liked Reputation, though I was like a closet Swift listener at the time, and it like sucked at first, but then I liked it. Like I love things that suck, that people think suck. Like I truly do. So, um, yeah, I like Canceled. I like Actually Romantic, in a campy, as you said, romantic's Toxic Yuri kind of way, and I like the first couple of opening tracks as well, and I hate the title track. That one really makes me cringe. Like the storytelling there is just not delivering for me. But I like Father Figure. Can't help it. But um, Rebel Soul 213 said, "How do you know if you're high empathy or low empathy?" I think that is up for you to describe, because empathy itself is already an illusion. That's one of the big points I always strive to make in these conversations, is that people who say they are very empathetic, they are experiencing for themselves a lot of like emotional feedback from other people, but they are not actually feeling another person's feelings. Their body and mind is simulating what they think that other person must be feeling based on facial cues, body cues, information about the situation, and their own personal baggage about the topic. And that can be very intense and meaningful to them to feel that, but it is not real. It is a simulation. It is, I mean, all perception is a simulation, like reconstructed by the brain, but we are not, there's no connection between us and another person's physical, emotional state. Much as we can talk about in like philosophy class, how do I know that my color blue, when I see the color blue, it looks the same as what the color blue looks like to you? We can't. The same thing's true with sadness. My sadness might not be your sadness, and a situation that might make you sad might not be a situation that makes me sad. And so, to an extent, no one has actual empathy, but people vary in how much they have this strong sense of an emotional connection to another person in real time. And I think a lot of autistic people, we feel kind of emotionally deadened, alexithymic, don't really have feelings in the moment that we can recognize, and we struggle to perceive what messages a person might be giving off emotionally in how their tone of voice sounds, in their body movements, not picking up on things on a nonverbal and emotional level. That all feeds into lacking empathy or having low empathy, as it were. Phase Nemesis says, "I'm at work and haven't gotten to read. I stopped telling anyone I have issues with empathy because it straight up destroys my relationships with neurotypicals." I think that is very fair. It really creeps people out. I even have some really good friends who will say to me, "Oh, how can you say that you don't have empathy? The things you write are some of the most empathetic things I've read." And it's like, well, yeah, that's because I'm trying to understand something I don't understand. And I'm faking it. Like that goes to show how artificial empathy really is. That I, who am someone who usually when something bad happens to someone else, I don't immediately feel sad for them. Just as an example, I usually feel my own shit, and then maybe if I think about it more, or try to feel something, or connect it to my own feelings, then maybe I'll feel sadness or grief for them, or alongside them. Um, Like I'm not an empathetic person. That's not like a natural reaction that I have to things. And I can still trick you into thinking I have empathy, because I've practiced active listening and like emulating neurotypical emotions my whole life. And I like studied this shit on like a graduate level because it did not come naturally to me, but I wanted to be good at it. So um it's very easy to, it's not easy to game, but it is gameable because it is artificial and it is a social performance. I find it sometimes hard to believe that anybody has empathy because it's so anathema to my own experience of the world. Like I tend to think that other people are faking or morally signaling even, but I know that's not true. I believe people just to describe their own experience for the most part, even though I do think people have social incentives for describing their feelings being a certain way. But when people hear that you do not have empathy, they do really think you're creepy or evil. And that's why I find it very important to normalize it, as it were, and talk about it. I'm not afraid to talk about it. I already have enough kind of goodwill invested in, like, people tend to think of me as empathetic enough that then I can say, actually, I'm not. Like, let's unpack where this is coming from. Trilicon, great to see you. Great to see you here. We might not be able to emotionally handle the stream right now. We just got out of therapy. We'll catch the VOD later. Have fun. Thank you so much for being here and for saying hi. Yeah, it's a heavy topic. It's cathartic to talk about with other people, but there is this really heavy baggage that I talk about in the piece of feeling like you're evil. That not having this feeling that everybody else has that seems to just instinctively make them bond to one another really makes you feel like you might be evil. And that has been a huge specter haunting my life for a very, very long time. This fear of being evil, cold-blooded, uncompassionate, not being able to care for people. Even things like the fact that showing up for people for me is hard and usually not rewarding. Like, it sounds bad. And in like queer, lefty, neurodiversity spaces, we talk a lot about how important it is to show up for each other. And people say that they just naturally want to do it and find it rewarding. And I find it draining and irritating most of the time. Like, it's a lot of work. It's not something that generally gives me the warm fuzzies, with some exceptions. Sometimes I can take pride in like doing a good job supporting someone, or feeling like I did something that was objectively like the sensible, helpful thing to do, you know. But showing up for people emotionally is really tough and not pleasant, and it usually takes more out of me than it like gives back, and that sounds bad to people. And it makes them not want to invest community-wise in you. So it can be a very tough and lonesome experience, not being able to connect in that way. 1634 said, I have recently come to terms with the fact that I have little to no empathy after defending myself and my ability to empathize for many years. And that's respectability politics, right? Like, I can't really blame anyone for emphasizing that autistic people can have empathy, that their empathy just looks different, that actually they feel emotionally deadened because of alexithymia, but there is empathy there, or they're suffering from an excess of empathy. Because what people are saying when they say that is they're begging to be seen as still human and redeemable, and showing that they do have feelings. Because I think almost everyone has some amount of feeling, right? Like, there are people who, you know, I don't want to completely state out of hand that somebody has to, but people would certainly have like bodily signals that they may recognize, though some autistic people don't. No, actually, yeah, I'll take that back. There are some people who maybe their experiences, they have no feelings, no emotions, no awareness of body states, and like those are still human beings too. So like, what are we doing here? You know, like we have to accept that, and still recognize that as part of humanity, and be able to extend compassion and care and an awareness of that person's humanity, even if their like phenomenology of existence is totally different from our own and is a little bit hard for us to imagine. Like, the humility needs to be there. And I don't think it's so frustrating that like quote unquote empathetic people can show the least concern for people who feel differently from themselves. It's a really sad, I won't even say irony, because it's not really that surprising in an ableist society, but it's the hypocrisy of it is really transparent. Gremlin Simmer said, I'm usually a summer autistic, but this year has been different. Yes, in Australia. Hello. Yes, lovely. Red Seraph says, Yeah, for many years I thought I was very empathetic. Turns out I was usually just very anxious about what another person was thinking. Let's talk about this because this is a bullet point I meant to put in this piece, talking about a piece post-mortem, and I didn't, and I wish I had. Emotional surveillance. I talk about this a little bit in the book Unmasking for Life, particularly in the relationships chapter. But because a lot of autistic people have a ton of really bad attachment trauma of being rejected and not being bonded with throughout the course of their lives, and because we mask by trying to figure out what other people want of us and performing that, a lot of us become really heavy emotional surveillors. And certainly anxiety just by itself, social anxiety, contributes to this too. It's not exclusively an autism thing either. But a lot of us, and you can also kind of call this codependency. I have sometimes called this being codependent with the entire world, where you have been existing under a state of such frequent and unpredictable social threat that you never feel okay unless you have reassurance that everyone around you is okay. That is what you think you need in order to feel safe, is constant reassurance that nobody is disappointed or unhappy with you, that you are meeting their needs, and even that they're not unhappy in general, that you just need everybody to be okay and happy all the time. White supremacy also figures into this. If you are affected by white supremacy culture, which most of us are, white or not, there's this demand of performing kind of a neutral to slightly positive emotional tenor and never being negative or open or critical. So that's also a factor too. And so what that can manifest as is constantly watching other people for any sign of distress, anger, constantly asking them, are you okay? Are you okay? Why did you do that? You're sighing. Are you upset with me? Guessing and mind reading at what might be making them upset, preempting something that is not technically your problem, but making it your problem because you don't want them to be upset. So you're trying to solve problems for the other person before those problems even occur when it is not your fucking journey. Trying to manage conflicts between other people when it's not your fucking fight. Trying to smooth over conflict. This is where we really get into the more toxic, potentially white supremacist side of things, not being comfortable with anybody else being uncomfortable, not being able to live with that, and that being a huge source of anxiety. And a lot of people who live like that in this state of really, really extreme emotional hypervigilance think that they are master empaths. They read people so well. Books like The Highly Sensitive Person surely haven't helped because they talk about how much the empath. Thanks for the follow, Weeby Hut Jr. They talk about how the empath is drained by the energies of other people, as if they have like magic psychic powers. And it's not that. It's that they are constantly scanning every person's body and their nonverbals for any sign of displeasure, and then jumping into frantic, anxious action the second they see it, because they need that, they think, in order to feel okay. And the sad thing is, they never actually feel okay. You know, like I have been a hardcore emotional surveiller throughout my life, especially in my relationships. And I never actually felt okay. I never felt secure because I was constantly looking for ways in which I must have been failing because I thought I needed to like spackle over every single one of them or else the person would leave me. And that just makes you really anxious. It makes you come to even kind of resent another person for having their own feelings about things. It is the enemy of healthy conflict, and it does not make a person feel supported. It makes them feel controlled. You know, I use the word surveillance very intentionally there, that if somebody is constantly looking at you and checking in on every little thing you're doing with your body to make sure you're not mad, that's going to make you mask. It's going to make you feel tense and on edge. I know because I have been on the receiving end of this same treatment from a lot of heavy masking autistics and even members of my own family who have a lot of the same strategies. It's exhausting to have somebody constantly demand that you perform calm, neutral okayness. Otherwise, they're going to have a shit fit. So it's a terrible struggle. It's really awful. These things, just to be very clear, the red serif, I'm saying this stuff because I have been there too, and perhaps what I'm describing is a more extreme and noxious version of that is nothing what it looks like for you. But this stuff comes from attachment trauma, being in a very socially precarious position, and being put in the position of being made responsible for other people's feelings all the time. So a lot of like parentified kids and other groups experience it, and it sucks. And it is a way that people try to cope with not having empathy sometimes. But it's like this like brute force attempt at empathy. It's like I need to collect explicit data on every emotion that this person is feeling all of the time, which is just not sustainable, and that's no way to live life. But it's what a lot of us end up having to default to until we learn differently or we get safe. Bromantic says, I haven't read the piece yet, but I anticipate that I will relate to the people who think they're high empathy but learn they aren't. Suhularsa said same about a feeling emotionally deadened. I don't cry when characters die in movies or TV, but once they show other characters crying and sad, then I cry because I care about these characters, and seeing them sad makes me think about my own. Is that shit? Think about my own shit, and then I feel sad, sort of. Yeah, it's very interesting what gets me and what doesn't. My dad, he always would cry if an animal was hurting in a show. Like at the end of Lassie, when Lassie's like holding her paw up, it would make him just bawl crying. But if a human died or something bad happened to a kid in a show or anything like that, or a movie, he never felt anything and he didn't give a shit. But an animal being even slightly uncomfortable just got the waterworks. And we know that a lot of autistics find it easier to empathize with objects or animals than with people, that we feel a more reflexive connection. And I'd say that's often true for me too. Medkip says, nothing quite like being the therapist friend, despite low empathy, and burning out from being hypervigilant about other people's emotions, real or perceived. Ooh, Lord. And it sucks because the call is coming from inside the house to an extent. It's such a hard loop to get out of because if you're in that position, you're usually someone who has trained people to expect that from you. You're probably not asking for things or being very emotionally expressive of your own shit when you spend time with them. Or because you're doing this hyper empathetic routine performance, the people who gravitate to you are the people who need that, and they might not be able to show up for you the way that you need to be showed up for because you're pouring all that attention into them all the time. So the people you attract are the people who want that, and they might not be great listeners. And it's a really stressful, lonesome existence, and I relate to that a ton. John Prime says it creates like an otherness in oneself. Like, wait, have I been feeling real feelings or fake ones the whole time? Yeah, and this is why I need to take more psychedelics or something, because I'm always wanting to get down to what is the real, as if there is a real, you know, it's always changing. But I want to get past all of these layers of meta emotion, the feelings you have about your feelings, and the thoughts that I have about my feelings, to just really mourn the things I need to mourn and just like cut loose and be messy. But unfortunately, when I took mushrooms, it just made me write a book. So and get on my grind set. So I need to like drop some acid or something. Medkip says, I always feel guilty for wanting to ask follow-up questions when someone mentions something they're going through. Like I need more data to know how to feel about it, but I can also tell they're upset, so I don't want to make them explain more. Or worse, make them think I don't take their emotions seriously. Yeah, this is no, this is not explicitly in the article. And that yeah, not really. And it's something it's part of the therapist friend routine for me too, where if something happens to someone, let's say somebody in their family died, my instinct is to first just acknowledge that I know that means a lot of complicated emotions can come up because that is my own experience. And so I know that it's not always a sad thing. Sometimes it's a relief, but then sometimes you feel guilty that it's a relief and all kinds of other feelings. Some, and So I usually throw that out there, and then I like to ask the person a little bit about the relationship or what's happening, because you really can't assume. And it's the damnedest thing because non-autistic people make assumptions about what another person must be feeling all the time. You know, if you say that your dad died, they'll say, "Oh, I'm so sorry," when sometimes it's the best thing that's ever fucking happened to you. You know, when you say you're getting divorced, they say it's, you know, that it's horrible, even though it's probably the end of something really bad. And so it might be a positive time for you. And, or like if you're estranged from your parents, they'll say it makes them sad to think about it. So they'll tell you, "Oh, but your parents love you. You really need to find your way to make peace with them and reconnect." And they don't fucking know. Maybe your parents don't love you. Maybe it doesn't matter whether they love you because they couldn't love you right, you know? So asking questions, I think, is a great thing. And I think people, even empathetic people, steamroll over a person pretty frequently and miss what that person is genuinely feeling because they're projecting their own emotions about the topic. Because it's not empathy, it's projection, it's an illusion. And I also find that, like, I find human beings interesting. That is my saving grace. Like, I can't always feel for people or feel close to people, but I do want to learn about things. And so a lot of times when something bad happens to someone or somebody I know alludes to something horrible that happened to them, I will be asking questions about, like, "Oh, okay, you know, what did your brother do? Like, what was that like? What, you know, when did you know you were gay and when did you come out?" Like, I ask all these questions and I'm like collecting data, both because I'm like a freak and I just feed on that shit, and to like have a better working model of the other person in my mind. And when it goes well, the person likes to share and we grow closer and they feel listened to, and that's beautiful. It can end up with them starting to see me as a therapist type figure, which is not great, but again, it's kind of on me for training them to see me that way in that case. And other people, it really creeps them out, and it depends on the nature of the relationship and whether they're neurodivergent as well. ADHDers, as a general rule, I love ADHDers because I feel like most of the ADHDers in my life, I can ask them fucking anything and they will tell me, like, they will just give me the whole lore dump on all the shit and all the trauma. And like, I want to hear it. If they are comfortable talking about it, I want to hear every little detail about this fucked up thing that happened to you when you were 12. Like, I am seated, and I'm interested, and I will keep what I learn in mind when I talk to you in the future about what some of your possible triggers might be, and I'll check in about it. But it can be something that for neurotypicals they find it really invasive. Lots of people relating to the description of being the therapist zoned person. Face Nemesis says, "I joke that empaths are just imagining other people's feelings via projection." Absolutely. That is that is absolutely, just even on a like cognitive level, what is happening. You're not picking up some wavelength the way that you can see a color, like pick up a wavelength of light and see a color. Even then, the way the brain works is the eye is picking up an amount, like wavelengths of light coming off of an object based on its color, and then recreating based on that wavelength an image of the color. So even then, the brain is still doing a lot of production, but it's still picking up on some like data from the world. But when it comes to emotions, it's not even that. It's not like there's an emotional wavelength that someone is giving off. Like your brain really is just, for an empathetic person, pattern matching and saying, "Oh, they're slouching, they must be bored," and I can feel that too, you know. And it could be completely wrong. Their back could just hurt, you know. That could be just how they sit, you know. Like somebody could have their arms closed off because they're autistic and they need the pressure, and this could be their most relaxed state is with their arms crossed, but they look pissed off to you, and so you're sensing that they're pissed off. I had a former colleague who was a psychologist, and she would always be like, "Devin, what's wrong? You look so tired. You look so sad." And it's like, my face just looks like that. You're not this genius of emotional perception. Or if you are, I always feel tired and sad. So you really got me there, you know, like it's not, ooh, wow, what a guess. It's not magic psychic powers. It's, I have eye bags, and I've been over this shit since I was like 8 years old. Groucho Marxist says, not everyone is like that for what it's worth, referring to follow-up questions. Some of us do like follow-up questions, not always right away, and sometimes people reveal what else they feel. It depends on the person. I don't take follow-up questions as an attack. But are you in the US? American society and culture hates curious minds. Woo! Woo! That was loud. Yeah, oh my god. That's on point. That even makes me think of some exchanges I've seen on the Discord, the Discord for these streams, where talking about, like, because there's a lot of people from or living in Germany on the Discord, and talking about just like the German way of communicating. It seems like it's very like you can just. I know there's like a much slower like on ramp to making friends with people in Germany, like much slower than the U.S. But it also seems like people can be direct about really direct about a lot of things. And it's like you don't necessarily have to unlock like best friends level to be like, well, you know, tell me about this in like a very straightforward way. Whereas in the U.S., you're right, curiosity. The U.S. hates curious minds. It's true. Like, it seems like you can take an intellectual interest in something, even in somebody else's situation or their opinions on something, in, say, Germany, or in, I'm sure, many other countries around the world. Whereas in the US, like, if you ask a question, people feel like they're being challenged or asked to justify. And that does drive me fucking nuts. Man, fuck this place. This place sucks. So what compels people to care about one another if empathy is an illusion? General question, or what's it called? Not general question, genuine question. Because what creates solidarity, putting up a Palestinian flag, if people do not care? How does one not be flippant about others' pain if one doesn't feel empathy? I get into this in the piece, but I think a lot of people care for reasons other than empathy. It is, for me, it can be things like outrage. For me, it can be things like recognizing objectively that the standards being laid out are not fair. Recognizing that like the settler colonial project is not something that has brought good into the world based on what my values are. It's not desirable. It's not like the progression of this genocide is not a desirable outcome for me. More America and more Israel is not a desirable outcome for me. Like, this culture that I exist in, it's very destructive to me, and I know that I'm not like I'm one of the beneficiaries of it, and I hate it, and I don't want to see it exist. And I've studied closely, as best I can, and continue to, other ways of being and living and organizing themselves that I think sound way more appealing. And I selfishly want to be there. You know, I do not want to be in a settler colonial empire. I don't want the world to be ruled by that. So even on the most selfish level, Palestinian liberation naturally follows. People taking action in resistance, including violent resistance against the settler colonial state of Israel, is something that I personally like want to see. Like, I want to see it because that's how I want the world to be. I don't need to like look at videos of people suffering to want that. The videos of people suffering do not help me care about that. Like, I already care about it, and I also choose to care. And I also recognize that I have a vested personal interest in the destruction of these empires. Ismatu Gwendolyn, I linked to it in the piece, has this wonderful piece where they talk about how their leftism is not motivated by empathy. It is by them being a black genderqueer person and knowing that the destruction of capitalism is good for them. Like, they are fighting the fight because it is materially good for them. And I think this is a Marxist argument. I'm more of an anarchist, and I still think this is like one of the more compelling aspects of a lot of people's materialist like Marxist framework is you don't have to have empathy. Like the Marxist case is not one for empathy. It's a materialist case, right? It's people recognizing that capitalism is bad for them and no longer and recognizing that they are a part of a class that is targeted and exploited by capitalism, and together destroying that system for their own reasons. And that is really all you actually need, is to recognize, like, that's what class consciousness is. It's not feeling good feelings for other people, though if you feel that, great. It's recognizing that you are being targeted and that the world is set up in a way that's stacked against you, and it does not have to be. And so for me, that is where it comes from, really. It's not from these things that I hear other people saying of, like, I saw the news of this horrible event and I was in bed all day crying my eyes out. That is not what happens to me. I do have emotions. I do have emotions about these things. Frustration, panic, dread, hopelessness, personally. But those things do not lead to me taking any kind of action. If anything, they're very disempowering. When I take action, or when I stand up in solidarity with Palestinians, it is because that's good for me. And I'm not afraid to say that. Like, I think that is something that is like an important part of like any kind of decolonial anti-capitalist project, is recognizing that you have skin in this game, that it is not just some generous act you're doing. It's you fighting for your own life. And it was very transparent to me from the moment of the Al-Aqsa flood resistance, that seeing how institutions around me were responding to that and standing with the Israeli state showed me how disposable I also was, and anybody that I care about is. And it was very disillusioning in a very good way. You know, it made me completely lose any faith in publishing, media, academia, every institutions I was already wildly skeptical of, but it really made it clear to me that there is no redeeming these things. There is no redeeming America. There is no redeeming, Big Five publishing, whatever, the university, whatever, because they will completely fall in with a genocidal empire and put all of their professed values to the wayside. They never actually cared about them. And so that is my answer personally. It's very in conversation with and inspired by Ismatu Gwendolyn's amazing writing on this subject, and I think it is a very materialist and like Marxist friendly view. And from a lot of the Marxists that I know, that is their argument in general, is that the work they do is not out of empathy. It is out of a material recognition of their class interests and what they think is best for themselves in the world. And I think that's a way more persuasive argument than like, you should do this because it'll make you a good person, or it's being a responsible ally. Sorry to use a snarky tone of voice for saying that stuff, but I think that stuff leads to a lot of like liberal performative BS a lot of the time. So you unlocked a huge rant on my part. It's something I've also been wanting to write about for ages in a longer way. But honestly, Ismatu, they already nailed it. So, yes, we'll talk about the cognitive empathy piece a little bit later on, as we get to reading as well. You can still mentally think about how someone might feel and what they're going through. And choose to do that, regardless of whether you feel like magical empathy powers. Let's see. Sorry, I just missed some messages in the chat. Medkip says, my biggest mental health goal right now is to get better at not just knowing my wants and needs, but actually asking folks for help or support, or even just a listening ear. I am prone to being a fixer, so I expect it from others. Oops. Yes. Very much that. I still sometimes don't even know what asking for support means, because usually what I want is for people to leave me alone and to just stop asking something of me for a fucking minute. Like, I do want, like, I guess it's things that I'm just so afraid to ask for that I can't even think about it, like affection and care. Like, I don't trust it, it's really hard. It's really hard if you've never felt safe. Like, part of the reason you might not be asking for help is because you don't really feel safe around anyone. That's a realization I had recently in talking about this stuff with a friend, friend of the show, Photopotamus, that it's not just that I default to always helping and fail to ask for support enough, though behaviorally that's a factor. I also never feel safe around anyone. So of course I don't, like, I can't receive help from them. I can't be weak in front of them because I don't trust them. So that's something to work fucking through. I can help someone. That's a way that I can build closeness because it's still on my terms. I'm still in control. You lose control when you actually make yourself actually vulnerable to someone and rely on them. And I don't do that. So Lena Mel says, I may not get sad when I see someone going through shit, but I can still go, yeah, I know how that or something similar feels, and it really sucks. You shouldn't have to suffer like that. Absolutely. Better that than being flippant and shitty. Sorry, this topic hits personal for me. You're good. No, it's great to have you here and be asking the question. Groucho Marxist. This is good stuff, and I think people who are approaching this topic with genuine curiosity, or it's just something that they've never thought about in this way before, I think that is very welcome. I certainly welcome it. I wouldn't be writing about it and broadcasting all my shit to the world if I didn't think there was value in doing it. And I am, again, this is, it feels like a very Marxist friendly thing. Like, I don't have the approach of like, oh, it's not my job to educate you, or like, it's not fair for me to have to bear my pain to make you understand. It's like, well, shit, like, if I want people to understand, I'm going to have to do, like, just logically, I'm going to have to do what I think will help people understand. And I can do it, and I find it interesting to do. So, yeah. Love to lore dump. ADHD here, compulsive lore dump is my specialty. That shit can be so fun. Scooter Frogs welcome, says, gosh, I want an autistic therapist so bad. Neurodiverse ndtherapists.com. ndtherapists.com. The Neurodivergent Therapist Directory. Find yourself one. Good luck with that. Medkip says, I don't want to romanticize Germany. Yeah, we definitely shouldn't. But I crave direct communication so badly. And apple streusel. Marxism is just a useful lens of analysis no matter your ideology, says Lena Mel. I agree. I sometimes get prickly because there's a lot of Marxists on the internet who shit on anarchists, even though these two frameworks and technologies can be friends and can be, I'm doing like hand mouths that are like making out with each other. I love you, Marxism. I love you, anarchism. Blah, blah, blah. But like, yeah, Marxism is like a framework of analysis that I think is very useful, even if there are things in like how it gets applied by some people today that like we might have some disagreements or some ways to work around. But like at the end of the day, we're homies. Air Gender says, I feel like identifying the selfish motivations for divesting from shit like this is vital for everyone, especially white people. Because, yeah, hand-wringing and feeling guilty or bad for marginalized people is not really enough fuel to overthrow these systems. Yes, if you are doing something purely out of a sense of charity or moral redemption for yourself, you are going to stop the second that it gets costly, because you are only doing that thing because it feels good. And if you have other things in your life that feel worse, you're not going to do it anymore. So as soon as your guilt is overweighed by your fear of losing your social status or your wealth, you're going to stop doing the things that allay your guilt, and you're just going to sit in your guilt and your wealth in your gated community on top of your like money in the imperial core. And that is what happens. People who are standing to gain from the settler colonial capitalist project are not people who betray capitalism. Like that's like Marxism 101, right? Like that's like material analysis. People do things that make sense from their material position. And so as much as somebody can say they believe in like racial justice or even something like land back, like if it means they're going to lose their mansion and their social status, they're almost never going to do it. And they're never going to examine the things that would require them to do that. They're going to do things that are smaller and more symbolic that make them feel good. but they're not gonna, it's not gonna, if actually fighting imperialism and capitalism is gonna make you less safe, less resourced, you're gonna have less control over your life, less control over other people, and you're gonna have a different standard of living than what you're used to, you're not gonna do it. Like, that's America. Like very few people in America are willing to stand against the settler colonial empire, even if they are oppressed in America, because they still recognize that it's better to have American military might behind them and wealth and all the resources that we steal from the world than to have that collapse. Like, the collapse of the US would be good for the majority of the world, but it would not be good for a majority of Americans. And so, of course, the majority of Americans do not take action that would lead to that happening. Like, people, and this goes to another case that I'm going to make in writing eventually, which is that morality is not a useful lens for understanding why people behave as they behave. I've posted about this on Tumblr before, but if you look at how people behave, like, material analysis usually works pretty well. And the other big variable that matters, aside from just wealth and resources, is social pressure. Like, people do what will keep them connected, and they do what will keep them kind of comfortable and resourced. They don't do what's good. That's not, if we're trying to predict how someone's going to behave, we should not ask what's good to do. We should ask what is good for them financially and what is going to prevent them from being socially ostracized. Those are the factors, and that is what predicts what a person is going to do. And so there needs to be essentially a material, a resource-based, and a social reason for someone to take action, especially dramatic action, against capitalism or imperialism. That's what I think at this stage in my findings, in my probing this reality to try and understand. And my opinions on this subject have gotten more and more radical over time. I used to be a little bit more, oh, we could make an appeal to people's hearts and minds. We can persuade them to care. And we need to. And, like, I don't think that works if somebody still stands to gain from an oppressive empire. Oh, thank you for unlocking these rants, everybody. This is great stuff to talk about. I hope people are getting something out of it. DJ Andian says, I care deeply because I want to live in a world that's kind to me. And I think the best way to do that is to make sure the world is kind to oppressed people, as many different types as possible. That way I'll be included too. I don't really have much empathy. I just don't want bad things to happen to me. An only true way to avoid that is to stop systems that hurt people, or invest in resources that might help me if I'm ever in that position. That is also my experience. I have talked about this before, but when I was young, I was a libertarian. And the thought behind that was that I felt very restricted by society as a deviant person in a lot of different ways. And I thought unbridled freedom and the ability to just, like, go make my own money and do whatever I want without any laws or rules containing me is the only way I'm going to ever be able to be myself. That was my belief at the time. Eventually, I realized I was transgender or something, and queer, and I realized, and I also disabled, and I had to confront the fact that being this independent libertarian cowboy type was never going to be possible for me, and in fact is not realistic for anyone. And I learned that I needed social contact. I talk about this in Unmasking Autism. I did not used to know that I, like, do need some amount of social contact and people caring about me to be okay. I really thought people were just, like, dead weight or an annoyance to me. So that changed the calculus for me, because it meant that I need not just myself to be okay. I need there to be people that care about me and accept me. That if I really want to be free as myself, I need people to be okay with me and to like me and care about me. And I need those people to be okay too. And I can go out and try and hustle up wealth and freedom for myself under capitalism, and having certain privileges that I have, I might even be able to do a little bit of that until my body breaks down as a disabled person. But I cannot create an entire community of people who love me through capitalism. Like, obviously a lot of rich people do try to do that. They just hire their friends and family and partners, you know? Like their wealth is how they manage to hold on to people around them and control them. But like realistically, that was not what I wanted to do or was going to be capable of doing. And so realizing I was trans and autistic and incredibly vulnerable in these ways that I did not realize that I was before, that is what radicalized me against capitalism. It was self-interested. But realizing that I need social relationships is a self-interest that is prosocial. Like it meant, oh, I need to actually think about how I affect people. I need to think about other people's feelings and what they need. And I need to start thinking about politically, how will the people I care about get their needs met? Because I can't do all of it. We need some kind of social system in place for getting resources and support to people. Otherwise, I am also going to die alone and unresourced. And so that made me an anti-capitalist and eventually more of an anarchist, more of a materialist, I guess we could say, and very anti-imperialist. Like that was the road for me. It is self-interest to realize you need people, and so then you do have to care about people because you need people. And I don't think that's bad. You know, a lot of people will hear that and they'll think that you're like a evil freak, but it is what it is. Like it's how I function, and I think it's how a lot of people function if they were honest with themselves. And there's like, if I really believe that no thought or feeling is morally wrong, then it's okay if I don't feel certain things for other people in the way others do. If I'm doing the actions that help them and that help all of us, who fucking cares? Lena Mel says, asking for stuff is so difficult when your brain is convinced everyone might attack you over it, regardless of the evidence to the contrary. Yeah. Yeah. Or we'll just like abandon you because you asked for it. Attachment trauma is a fuck. Medkip says, I'm closer to feeling safe with a few people, but because of how few people it is, I am perpetually scared of asking for support because I assume I am burdening them, which I guess means I still feel unsafe socially or socially unstable. Food for thought. My rejection sensitivity isn't that bad, I think to myself, as I avoid asking anything of my partner or best friend or sibling because what if it's too much? Well, I think this is something where I'm thinking of a BDSM analogy, of course. I have a friend that I've been doing rope bondage with lately, and we did suspension play for the very first time recently. And for that to be possible, I had to really be able, I was the rope bottom, of course, knowing me. And for that to be possible for us, he had to know that I would say when something was uncomfortable. Like I had to be able to say, my hand is getting numb, my wrist hurts, this is digging into a muscle, you need to bring me down. And it was only possible because other times in the past, he had me tied up just like on the floor, and I would say, I need a safe word because it's too cold in this room, and it's like I'm pissed off now. Like you've kept me by the AC for too long, and now I'm done. Or like this thing isn't working for me. This thing feels weird. This thing is hurting my hypermobility. And he told me straight up, like, I feel safer doing more extreme shit with you because I know you'll actually tell me when it's gone too far. And the reason I bring this all up, Medkip, is because maybe in your relationships, if you have that fear, I have the same fear too. And so I'm telling this to myself as well. Maybe what you need to feel safe asking for something is to see the people you love say when it is too much. Like they need to be able to emotionally safe word, because then you know that the limit is there and you're not going to overstep it because they're going to tell you. So that might be something to talk about with some of those people in your life. Note to self, as someone who also, this is relevant to the piece I'm working on right now on insecurity and polyamory. I just assume somebody has too much going on and then I don't even ask, which is awful. Far too often. I take myself out of the equation because I don't want to hear no. But what we actually need is to hear yes and no, I can't do that. Or yes, I can do this now. Now I can't do it anymore. Or I can do this and now I've hit my limit. That's the limit to how much I can do this. That is what will actually make us feel safe. Is hearing where the no is and knowing that it's not our job to enforce the other person's boundaries, and knowing that we can actually trust the other person to enforce their boundaries. So I guess that means I'm gonna have to have some conversations with some people too, because I'm the same way. Rather than asking too much, I ask none. The Foggy Sis says, unrelated to the stream, but I recently moved from the Middle East to North America, and I was so confused why the VOD wasn't up when I saw the story about the stream. And then I realized it's now actually at a time when I'm awake. Welcome, and I'm sorry. Welcome to America. Love it. Or North America. Hopefully you're not in the US. Romantic says, I think a lot of my therapist friend tendencies come from some kind of desire to make up for moments in my life when I personally wasn't supported in that kind of way. Oh, um, I won't let this happen to you, kind of. What happened to me, I don't want to have happen to others. And that can be redemptive. That's not a bad thing. Like, certainly for me, I've had that experience with like supporting sexual assault survivors where um, there were people who had experiences that were very similar to experiences I had had, or even they were victims of the same person. And I had suffered in silence, and I got the chance to show up for that other person and understand exactly what they were going through because it was the same person and this exact same pattern of abuse. And I did find that really healing and redemptive. So I like there is a place, I think, for that kind of thing. And I think being selfless or self sacrificing with others does have its place. Sometimes, like, if you are getting something emotionally out of it, then it's great. Well, thank you for the follows. 123 fur. Um, and who was it right before that? I know it's somebody who's been in the chat. Sorry, I missed the notification. Um, so like there is something to be said for sometimes choosing, oh, I'm getting something emotionally out of showing up for someone, and I'm choosing to do that. But I think it's when it becomes a reflex and you're just over giving all the time that it really burns you out and gives you compassion fatigue and like all these horrible things. The Foggy Sis says, I've really noticed that even in like woke people I've met here in Canada, just like you say, are still under the impression that they are in a good situation compared to the world, while completely ignoring how colonialism is here. One person I talked to said they felt sad about their impression that the US will fall apart soon because they like the culture, I guess. I found it very shocking as an outsider. That well, yeah, I mean, I think it is also true that they benefit. If somebody's saying that, they personally benefit from colonization. Like I think that's fair to say is true of most Canadians who are not Indigenous, are probably to some extent benefiting from the colonial empire and are going to be sympathetic to colonial empires like the U.S. And there's this thing that like Canada, Australia, Europe does where they draw a contrast between themselves and the US to reassure themselves that they're not so bad. It's the same thing that the Democrats do, contrasting themselves from the Republicans. They justify their existing oppressive system by pointing to a much more overtly destructive version of it and saying, those guys are crazy. They're so evil. They're so stupid. Like, they demonize them and then they say, like, thank God we're not like that. But really, that other side of the coin is like a threat of if people don't fall in line and if people don't support our settler colonial empire, then we could end up like this evil settler colonial empire that's even more destructive, the U.S. In the same way that like the Democrats use the evil that Republicans do as a justification for their own evil because they're not so bad, and so you have to accept everything they give you, anything they give you, because otherwise we're going to sick our attack dog on you, which is the Republicans. Airgender says, warning as someone who is afraid of being too much and has a lot of rejection sensitivity, hearing the limit or no will likely feel really bad. I don't know hacks for making that more bearable. I think some of it is, unfortunately, like controlled micro exposures and distress tolerance and asking for reassurance afterward and all that shit. Like, I think there's a place for that, but also I know rejection sensitivity is intense, so that's not simple, and that's not always the case. And I think if you're in a really close relationship with someone, you can set some guidelines for how you like hearing a no that can be good for both of you, because probably the other person doesn't want you freaking out and hating yourself every time they say no. Like, they need to be safe to say no, and you need to be safe to hear no. And so ways that you can do that together can be something you can work out. And sometimes it's just about giving the person, like, sometimes a little white lie or less information, you know? Sometimes it really is better to just hear, sorry, I have a work thing, but rather than, I can't listen to you talk about your boyfriend one more time. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes a white lie actually does have its value for preventing the brainworms. Sometimes we have a right not to know things that are going to make us lose our shit, I feel. Welcome, May Valence. Hope you're having a good dinner. The Foggy Sis says, my interest in politics started from learning about apartheid in South Africa. I am not from there. I was definitely radicalized to the actual left/anarchism by getting closer to adulthood and realizing that I am not just mildly disabled. I'm a medium support needs autistic, and getting some psychiatry, medical, police-related PTSD, which radicalized me against these groups and in favor of disabled people. Yeah, I think realizing the extent to which I was disabled radicalized me a lot, because I always thought when I was younger that I could just willpower my way through everything, and I was better at doing that than most people. But I broke down so completely that eventually toughen up was not the answer anymore. Individualism was no longer the answer. If individualism and capitalism were going to work, I would have made it work. Like, and it didn't, you know? Medkip says, none of these people have told me I'm too much. It's lingering from other unstable folks in my past. Oh, yeah, of course. The fear of people keeping score and not telling me until I've seriously crossed the line. Like the emotional equivalent of Target only arresting you for shoplifting once you've stolen $2,000 worth of goods or whatever the number is. Yeah, the felony amount, I think it's only 1,000. So be careful. But yeah, like a lot of people who themselves are overhelpers, attachment trauma, codependence, whatever you want to call it, they also don't say when they're feeling overwhelmed. So they smile through the pain, and then they blow up, which I've also done at people, to be clear. And that's my fault. So yeah, you really do need this like trusting back and forth where both people can say, I can't talk about this right now. I can't be there for you right now. Do you have someone else? Or even, I need you to have someone else. I can support you, but I can't be the only one. Like, that's a reasonable request to make of someone. But it comes down to just talking about it, which is mortifying, but it really, and I avoid it like the plague often too, because I think I've got it figured out. But talking it through really makes a difference, and like going through that cycle. Like, one thing that I practiced early on a few years ago working on this stuff was just telling people when I couldn't talk about a particular topic anymore. Like, I would have friends who would trauma dump, kind of a troubling phrase, or just like rant about work problems, relationship problems. They would perseverate, right? Like, if we were hanging out, they would talk about it over and over and over and over and over again for 2 hours, and it made me want to just kill them. And like, like I couldn't be sympathetic to them anymore at that point. And so I learned to say, I can't talk about this anymore today. I don't want to hear any more about your fears about politics right now, because I also feel like the world is on fire and I just can't take any more dread. Like, I've said that to people that I'm close with, like I will talk about this with you, but I will tell you when I can't talk about it anymore. Or like familial abuse. Like, I'm happy to hear you. I've been there. I relate to you. And that is why I can't talk about this anymore today. Like, that for me has been a magic phrase of just saying, like, I need to talk about something else right now. Or I've told some friends, like, I need you to text me good news once in a fucking while. Like, I can't have myself dread getting text messages from you, because every time you text message me, it's something horrible that's happened. You need to tell me good things that happen to you too throughout the week, even if it's just I saw a puppy dog, I listened to this song. Like, send me some mundane shit, please, because then I'll be able to show up for you when shit is bad instead of associating you with like Debbie Downer in my mind, because I don't want to feel that way about you, you know. So like, these are tools I am offering if they are useful, but your mileage may vary. 123 says, I live in a country where there is a rise in the locals not wanting immigrants, but when I see some of the locals with Palestine flags outside their houses or lapels they wear, I feel a strong sense that these people want me here and I belong. That's great to hear. Yeah, I am not a big fan of like, I am often skeptical of like performative gestures, but I think Palestinian liberation was one of those things where it's like still so wildly politically reviled and attacked, and the whole world, like the whole like militaristic imperial world, is stacked against it so much that just like showing the fucking Palestinian flag and like saying you support Palestinian liberation from the river to the sea, like, period. Like, no settler colonial states. Israel does not have a right to exist. Like, all of that stuff is like, it needs to be said more. Like, it always actually does. It's not enough, but it's still so punished that it does need to be said. Like Lena said, ask for more support and hear no more, and it gets easier. Ask for reassurance and give yourself time to process it. Yep. That's the dance. Absolutely. Empathy without boundaries is self destruction. And it's also destruction of the relationship, I feel, often. Someone I follow reframed people pleasing as chronic self abandonment, and that is apt. You cannot infinitely prioritize others over yourself. It is not sustainable. Yes, and this is also part of my like anti-morality kick. Like, I like to tell people and myself lately, you actually don't have to be a good person. Like, it is not a requirement of the universe that you be a good person. You still exist if you're not a good person. Like, you could just like not think about whether you're being a good person. Just try that for like a week or something. You're probably not going to go around murdering people if you decide, I don't care this week about being a good person. Probably nothing is going to change if you do that, except maybe you'll be less anxious at people. At least that's what's helpful for me. Your mileage may vary. That like, you have to just exist. Like, you exist, like, regardless. You don't have to justify your existence. That's not a real thing. Nobody's watching you. There is no like universe that's keeping score of what you do, you know. Like, you are just existing, and you're not any different from like a cat or a beaver or an ant. Like, you have to eat and sleep and take care of yourself, and you need community. And you might think that in order to get that community, you have to be the best person in the world and convince everybody that you're a good person. But that is a different situation than actually having to be a good person. You know what I mean? I feel that it actually makes it easier to do pro-social things for the people around you when you let go of like, I need to be a good person, or I need to show up for everyone, or whatever rule set it is you have in your mind. Let's see, scrolling up on the chat. Oh my god, there's so many good things in this chat. We will get to the piece soon, I promise. But this conversation is cooking. Moon the Magic Maze, welcome. Says, it's overwhelming to navigate communicating with nuanced depth, yet directly and simply with some sensitivity, when most folks I've encountered have so little awareness of where their yeses and nos reside in relation to the stuff and people of their lives. As a question asker and driven by curiosity person, I found I have to weigh the cost of being curious to the capacity of curiosity of others, as well as a certain willingness of intimacy. I agree. And I also think you sometimes have to let people struggle through their own bullshit. Like, sometimes if somebody has no boundaries, you cannot be the maintainer of their boundaries. Like, you can't, just because they won't tell you what their no is, does not mean that it's possible for you to figure out what their no is. So you actually have to, and this is going to sound bad, sometimes you actually have to cross their boundaries because they don't know where they are. You cannot know where they are. and it's not your job to know where they are. And so some people really have to just struggle through being made uncomfortable and doing more than they should have been doing and never speaking up and realizing that that is really extremely costly to them, and then they're going to have to stand up. So sometimes you end up having to be not the bad guy in the person's life. I'm not saying antagonize them, but sometimes you have to be the person who seems oblivious to their feelings because you're not going to play the emotional hyper empathy game. And you might be one part of the breaking point for them, of them realizing people keep doing this thing that I hate, and I've never told people that I hate it. So now I'm finally going to blow up and say that I hate it. And that's fine. You know, like you are not going to make every person comfortable, and it is not your obligation to make every person comfortable, and you are not capable of respecting the boundaries of somebody who does not even know what their boundaries are. And what that means is you are sometimes going to cross people's boundaries. Sometimes you are going to make people feel taken advantage of, annoyed, uncomfortable, weirded out, offended, triggered, hurt. And you cannot prevent that because they did not make it possible for you to prevent that. And there is a lesson for them in that experience. So you don't actually have to feel like you're a horrible person for stepping on their toes, because they have not made it possible for you to avoid it. And it will be eventually in the service of them to realize that they do have to communicate this stuff. Of course, it's not always safe for you to face that kind of rejection or outrage from a person, right? Like if they're a boss or a parent that you're reliant on for income or resources, then you can't really just let them be offended. But if it's like a friendship or somebody that you're in casual community with, an acquaintance, and they have really dog shit boundaries, traipse right all over those non-existent boundaries until they figure out where their fucking boundaries are. Like, it's okay, you know? I know it feels horrible, but like you can tell yourself, like, I'm actually helping set this person free. I'm giving them a reason to find their voice by talking too much, you know, or whatever it is. Romantic says, yes, coming from recent experience, I've had close friends give a no to emotional support recently. And it does feel pretty terrible in the moment. But also on what Devin said earlier about now knowing that what previously happened was okay, and now knowing that this person will express if it is going over the line, given that it's expressing in a kind of way with mutual understanding of support. Yeah, it's actually really nice to know where someone's limits are. It's very empowering because it means you can press a little bit further than you would instinctively. It's really like some game theory and kink shit. Like when you know what someone's limits are, you can run right up to that line and you know where to stop. Otherwise, you probably would have stopped way sooner because you don't know where the line is and you don't want to hurt the person. So it sucks. It's horrible, but it's liberating. I was literally just texting a friend that I wanted to talk about mundane things because they are scared and worthy of being shared. So like mood. Sacred and worthy of being shared. So like mood. Yes. Mundane things are important. We can't just talk about trauma all the time. Lots of therapist friends in the chat. Medkip says, realizing how many communication strategies I've tried and abandoned because I thought they didn't work. But really, they just didn't work with a particular person or in a particular dynamic. Of course, someone who is not concerned with my well-being will not listen to, I don't want to talk or hear about this. But I can still ask that of others. Yeah. That's a like classic question that I always go back to is, has this person ever apologized to you? Has this person ever been able to admit they were wrong? Does this person care about your opinions? Is there evidence that they do? And that can let you expect what will happen in the future. This in-depth boundary setting stuff is for the people we trust. It's for the people who are worth the time because they're going to meet your effort back. Thanks for following the Foggy Sis. Sis with an S, not with a C. Hi, gay. Hi, gay. Somebody, Artistic Bump, you'll be glad to hear somebody came in and said, hi, autism. Hi, gay. Hi, autism. Can we talk about Katya's units lately? When I found out on Bald and the Beautiful that she is genuinely wearing those units, like, out and about in her life, I was shaken to my core. And then apparently Trixie's getting hair plugs, so neither one of them's going to be bald anymore. What happened to Bald Boy Summer? Fucking crazy. Yes, let's all try for a day, for an hour, for a week to not be a good person and see what happens. Because then you might realize you can trust yourself a whole hell of a lot more than you think. All of the trying might not have been serving you. Air Ginger says, I know, the first unit they were memeing about, and I was like, it's kind of cunt, to be honest. I'm getting used to it. I am. It like looks a little bit like I've had haircuts similar to Katja's units, so I cannot fault her. And I think it does give her like not exactly a youthful energy, because she definitely looks 40, like, but like an energetic quality. Like she looks less sickly, you know, like it looks like she's feeling it, like she's feeling her oats, and it's great. It freaked me out at first because some of them, the first one was styled so crazy, like Surfer Boy, but like she's in California and she does ayahuasca and shit, so like why shouldn't she look like a burnout? Like Moon the Magic Maze says, antagonizer. Oh yeah, I'm pretty okay with not prioritizing other people's comfort. Awesome. And actively practicing this more without trying to be an asshole. But I find I typically will be villainized or unfriended. Navigating who is worth the time and effort is a bit newer for me in recent decades as an almost half-century human. No, that is legit. Like when you do this stuff, people will have a problem with it. And I still think it's usually better because those relationships, I think we were talking about this last week, where like those relationships where you're constantly tiptoeing around trying to not set the person off, usually you're going to do something that is going to set them off anyway, and they're going to reject you. Obviously I say that with like a lot of privilege, right? Like trans women get viciously like savaged for asking anything of anyone, saying no to anything. Black women do, black people in general, but especially black women do. Like, so I know it's not that simple as like, oh, well, fuck what they think. But I do think generally it is, if somebody doesn't care about you, like the conclusion is already written. You know what I mean? Like the story is only going to end one way. And you can make choices about how to minimize the damage for yourself. And usually that means giving that person as little access to you as possible. But like, you can't actually control whether they're going to fuck you over or not, or want to. R.I.P. Bald. I know. It's so sad. Sarah Seahorse, welcome, says, okay, I've been thinking about this recently. It feels like people mean something in particular when they say good person, but it really is a meaningless phrase. Yeah. Yes. And I also think morality is meaningless for the most part. Like it means, sometimes people say good person and they mean kind, they mean comfortable to be around, they mean generous, or they mean this person values the same things I value, and they express those values with their behavior. But sometimes people just mean this person has the feelings I think people are supposed to feel. Like, I think it is not useful to talk about being a good person, talking about what's good or bad in a moral sense, as if like declaring that something's bad will make it stop. It doesn't, you know, like if you want to know why something's happening, you don't just morally condemn it. You have to ask, why is it happening? Who profits from it happening? How is this behavior facilitated? And if all of those things are pointing to outcomes that I don't like or I don't agree with, how do I make that stop? How do I make it less appealing to do these things, or less necessary to do these things that I think are bad, rather than just saying, well, it's bad and people shouldn't be bad. And we are just so married to fucking puritanical, like Christian morality culture in the United States and in lots of other places. I think social media has made it worse, made it even easier to export this kind of puritanical thinking. People only care about, like, am I a good person? Do I seem like a good person? Do I feel the right things? And it doesn't help. The first one she put on, I low-key didn't even notice until they mentioned it. That's wild to me. Like, I thought, because she has worn wigs that are like, and like hair pieces, like smaller pieces that are like, I thought they were jokes. Now I'm forced to reconsider everything. Like, I thought she was being silly, but like, but I guess it's real. uh, Tough Tooth said, Katya can do no wrong. The Kurt Cobain one was wild in the best way. They're growing on me. At first, I was very scared. I was very frightened. I felt very unsafe. Um, but now I like it. Oh, she's like it's occurred to me over time that Katya is really not doing a bit. Like, she just is. She really just is like that. Like, she really can't write an email. Like, and how amazing it is that, like, she just happens to have such a charming personality and is so witty and smart that a whole network of people has erected themselves around her to make it possible for her to have a functional life because it's profitable that she's so charming and messy. And like, isn't that just the neurodivergent dream? Like, my goodness. To not have to ever look at my email again because people just think I'm so cool that they handle that shit, and all I have to do is show up and be like insane. And that's what people want. It's amazing. And like, and her, I could talk about Katya all day. Like, her really strong work boundaries. It's very clearly like this very like neurodivergent seeming thing where it's like, if she gets pushed too far, she's going to relapse or something bad's going to happen. So she just can't do it. She's not going to do it. And like, she has arranged her whole life around the fact that she has these really harsh limits and needs and like things she can't do. And I fucking love that. Bleach blonde Dave Strider fade from early trans years. But you know what? That's beautiful. Dave Strider, my God. Good and evil are just ways to say I personally morally approve or disapprove of them, while pretending it's less subjective. Yep. And it also means worthy of existence. Yeah. JG Wordart says, I find I freeze or fawn when someone is clearly pushing on my boundaries, so someone trying to get me to say no doesn't help. Is there a way to navigate that? Yes, I have a therapist or two. Tell them afterward. Start there. Tell them afterward. Maybe you already do. Feel free to share in the chat. But if somebody crosses your boundaries, let's say just a really obvious one, they start talking about your body or your appearance. Generally a rude thing to do. And let's say you really especially don't want that. While it happens, you're smiling through the pain. Text their ass after you get home. I know people consider that shit passive aggressive, and people sometimes don't respond well to it, but if they don't respond well to it, they never were going to respond well to you pushing back. It is fine for a neurodivergent person to communicate on their time frame and in their way. A lot of us need to wait until after something has happened to know how we feel about it. That's on alexithymia. You know, like, that is just what happens for a great many of us. And a lot of us do not process verbally at all. So it has to be acceptable in our relationships to say how we feel after the fact and in writing. So just literally text the person and say, like, you know, hey, it was great to see you. I was really uncomfortable when you made that comment about my haircut, my weight, what I was wearing or whatever. I really don't like people talking about my body. Please don't do that again. Now that is a request more than a boundary. So that is something you would do for someone you actually trust to give a shit. Because a boundary also has to have what? A consequence. So the real harder, scarier part that you can save for later if you're not there yet, but eventually you will have to get to, if this person still does not honor my request, what am I going to do? And that might be, I'm not going to hang out with them anymore. I'm going to tell them one more time after this, and if they keep doing it, I'm not going to hang out with them anymore. Or I'm going to get up and I'm going to leave. Whatever is accessible to you. And I know it might feel like a lot of options for enforcing your boundaries are not accessible right now. It will get easier if you start communicating them at all. It really will. You know, it builds your distress tolerance too, to see how the person reacts to it. So that kind of stuff I think is always great. Asynchronous communication really helps for that kind of thing. And you can even tell your really trusted people, thank you for the follow, Urgense Alerte. You can even tell the people really close to you that you are kind of a fawner, and you can ask them to help you. This is something Sarah Casper talks about, who I quote in Unmasking for Life. She says, you can present it as a way the person can help you. So you can say, hey, just so you know, I've told you before that I really struggle sometimes setting boundaries. Can you check in with me sometimes to make sure that my yes is actually a yes? Like if you're ever doubting that my yes is genuine about something, can you just ask me? And that might make it easier, or whatever would help you, find it easier to say no to things. Again, that is a request for the high tier trusted friends who are going to actually be willing potentially to do that and not be weird about it. But that's another tool. Like you start the best place to start is in your best relationships, like your safest relationships. And that could be like the weirdest people you know. That can be like the most emotionally warm people you know. Like it could be whoever you feel most safe putting shit out there with. So those are my thoughts on where to start. And over time, you may find that you actually are able to say it in the moment more often, because basically you're raising your sensitivity to your own discomfort. If you are a fawner, you've been ignoring and stifling out your own discomfort for a very long time, so you can't listen to it anymore. It may be the case that you always struggle with that, but if you start treating your discomfort as if it is something that deserves to be listened to, you will notice it more, most likely. And there'll be a lower threshold of discomfort before you speak up, or before you at least recognize it and can take action. So, yeah, I hope that helps. Maybe we should have just sent all the religious nutjobs into exile on some island instead of letting them colonize the US 400 years ago. I think that would have still been a colonization, of that island. But yeah, I mean, it sucks. Um, but I think there were enough deep-seated issues in like English culture that through all the other colonialisms they were doing and that other countries in Europe were doing, that we still probably would have been pretty fucked. Like, Protestantism, like Protestant work ethic, moral purity stuff still would have probably fucked us. But like, yeah, the Puritans were especially not it. I've never known true jealousy until learning Katja had created an email-free life as a slime mage. I know, real. Um, Lena, oh, this is a great suggestion from Lena Mel for setting boundaries. One possibility could be trying to practice it with something silly, like having a friend insist on buying you food you don't like so that you can practice saying no. That's a great thought, Lena. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think I used to do these pronoun correcting boot camps where we would like do fake scenarios of a person where you just like trans people would pair off together at the library and we would like play act like talking to a cashier or like meeting somebody new and them misgendering you and you correcting them. Like scripting, practicing, play acting, all that stuff can be really fun. Friends playfully testing each other's boundaries, like sending someone a meme that they hate or like an image they hate, but that's not going to like hurt them, but it's going to just like piss them off in like a fun way. Like things like that. Um, you know, giving people food they don't like. Those are great examples. Doing things that just annoy someone but are not going to hurt them. We all need to be more annoying. Like we truly do. There is such power in that. Um, Airgender says, yeah, the main received a no and felt bad. I'm thinking of was more, you reached my limit 2 months ago and I am telling you that now. People pleaser versus people pleaser. Right. Yeah. So sometimes somebody in that people pleaser versus people pleaser game of chicken, somebody has to just decide, fuck this, I'm going to be the bulldozer. I'm going to be the bad guy. It's actually going to set both of us free. Like I might have to be the person who gets told I suck because I keep doing this thing. And I can be like, well, why didn't you tell me, bitch? Like, and the person can be mad, and I can be mad, and we can be mad for a little while, and then hopefully, we come back to it more authentic with each other. Sometimes you just have to have the conflict, and sometimes that's good. Yeah. Do not know how to stick these very good tips into this fucked situation. I just got called out at work again for hygiene. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, Slime Mage. Yeah, when we talk about boundaries, boundaries are capable of being enforced when you have autonomy. And in the workplace, you don't have autonomy. Like, you are under constant threat of losing your ability to feed and house yourself. And so you are not in a free position to lay out consequences for boundaries being violated. It is an inherently abusive relationship structure, like the labor relationship. Like it just is. So I just say that to like give it some perspective of like, you are not failing at being assertive enough or whatever for accurately recognizing that speaking up for yourself could get you penalized, ostracized, or fired. In those situations, when you are living with an abuser, when you are dependent on family for finances, if you're being mistreated at work, sometimes there is nothing you can do other than to gray rock your way the fuck through it. It is structurally not possible to fully enforce boundaries because you are not being treated as an equal. You don't have the status of an equal. And so then that means you can think about like, what can I do to lessen how much this is hurting me or how often I have to deal with it? And that can be all kinds of things like, depends wildly on the person's situation, but it's like taking on this task so I'm around this person less, moving departments, having this response to this invasive question that is really boring and so it doesn't lead to follow-up questions, avoiding someone. Like, you don't necessarily get to stand up and speak for yourself unless you really, really trust the people you're around, which in a work environment you basically never can. Like, you should never trust your boss. You should never trust a manager. And even a coworker, you really have to do a lot to trust that you can speak up with them and that they're not going to mistreat you or rat you out for it. So just throwing that out there, that like, just acknowledging that like, boundary setting is for actual human relationships that are not exploitative. And it's not your fault if you can't like boundary set your way out of being abused. Yeah. Yeah. I think we just have to name that, like, and put that in perspective and like have realistic expectations of like, okay, if I'm going to deal with this at work, what supports do I need outside of work? Like also having some kind of plan, like almost a care plan for like, what am I going to do when I get these kinds of comments? How does it make me feel? And what do I need to help me deal with those feelings? Like, what's my plan for what am I going to do after work? Who can I reach out to in my real life to get support? What things make me feel better about this? What makes me think about this problem less? It's survival rather than like conquering the problem, unfortunately. Yeah, absolutely very important to acknowledge. All right, we've been streaming for 2 hours almost. Oh no, oh my god, these keep getting longer and longer. Let's talk about not having empathy. Let's read this damn piece. John Prime says, so trying to set boundaries with, say, someone who works in an academic institution would probably backfire pretty bad. How dependent are you on them? If they are your advisor, yes. If they are your professor, yes. If they're your boss, yes. If it's an institution you can walk away from safely, go nuts. The question is, how dependent are you on them for finances, your career, safety, your ability to stay where you are, all of that? If they have the ability to take away something you need or control the future of your academic progress, then you are not in a situation where it's fully safe to establish boundaries. Even something like the person in charge of your liaison for like disability services can still rat fuck you if they don't like you. So in that case, it's more of a mind of, how do I protect myself? How do I limit the amount of information I give to these people that they can use against me? And a lot of like, it's an inherently abusive structure. So then you look to the things that help people survive abuse. And that's stuff like gray rocking and getting yourself out of there, like flying under the radar and getting yourself out of there as soon as possible. Currently getting rat fucked right now. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's fucking academia. It's an incredibly abusive environment. Incredibly abusive, even more so than a lot of professional work environments, because you don't have as many of the like shaky legal protections that employees get, and there's a lot less accountability for, say, a dissertation advisor than there is for a boss. Like, you can sometimes switch managers. If your dissertation advisor drops you, you're like, your whole career can be done. It's fucked. So this is where you really you fawn your way through it. Like, you gray rock and fawn your way through it. You get in and get out of there as fast as possible. You tell people what they want to say, what they want to hear, and you have a support network outside of that structure. That is paramount. You have to have support outside of that oppressive structure, or you're gonna suffer so much. And this is why I tell people not to go, like, I can't recommend grad school unless somebody has a robust support network, because it is abusive. Like, the university is abusive. Disabled students are abused, graduate students are abused, student workers are abused. Like, I think it's important to name. Like, it's an inherently abusive structure. All right. Now let's transition to reading the piece aloud. If you'd like to read along, it is on drdevonprice.substack.com. Always free to read, forever. It's called How Some Autistics Get By Without Empathy. And I'm first going to do a few bubbles to soothe my nervous system that always holds on to my breath. So if you'd like to join me, we're just doing a little exhaling here because I hold my breath, and my voice teacher says I need to do this way more because I don't speak or sing on the breath, as it's called. I force air out like I'm like a squeeze box, which is very bad for me. So we're going to just do a few little bubs. Ooh, that was a long exhale. One more. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for helping me remember to breathe while I'm speaking for hours and hours. Cypress Hill starts playing in the background. Yes. Hopefully you enjoyed that nasty ASMR. So this piece is called How Some Autistics Get By Without Empathy. Feeling evil isn't easy. The cover image is a snippet from the Reading the Mind in the Eyes test, which is a test for supposedly measuring empathy based on looking at people's eyes and guessing what emotion they are feeling. Yeah, I hope someone joined the stream just then and then just was like, "Da fuck," and left. I'm sure many of you in the chat have taken this test before as part of your autism journey, and it's some bullshit, and we'll have lots of images from it scattered throughout the piece as little section breaks, which was very fun to put together. Screen share is off? Oh, thank you. Wonder why everything got broken. Display capture. Okay, there we go. I guess I just updated. So here is the piece. drdevonprice.substack.com, How Some Autistics Get By Without Empathy. Here's a pair of older white guy's eyes from the Reading the Mind in the Eye tests, which you can take for yourself at embrace-autism.com. But it is some bullshit. It is some complete bullshit. But they do make for some fun section breaks for the piece. In my writing, I have sometimes alluded to my not experiencing empathy, specifically what psychologists call affective empathy, or popularly understood as feeling someone else's feelings. You can contrast this with cognitive empathy, also known as perspective taking, which involves consciously thinking about how another person feels, or with compassion, which is consciously choosing to show people consideration with your actions. More on both of these later. Whatever that intuitive magic is that allows other people to gaze at a person's face or body language and feel in an instant what they might be feeling, I don't have it. When something tragic or unexpected happens to a person that I care about, I can seem baffled by their reactions and indifferent at first. It takes me time to really appreciate what they must be going through. Moving through the world, I'm often emotionally adrift and without much sense of whether another person understands me, is offended by me, or might be quietly asking me for something. Autistics do have empathy, is the protest of many autistic self-advocates when our collective humanity is called into question by the RFK Juniors of the world. In fact, some studies show that we are emotionally overwhelmed by empathizing too much. And certainly, it can be valuable to correct misconceptions, but only when doing so doesn't uplift the same ableist, neuroconformist standards that keep us oppressed and protesting for our lives. While it is true that some autistics can hold a job, write a poem, play baseball, and yes, feel empathy, the fact remains that many in our community cannot and never will. And it is those autistics who are considered the least human under an ableist regime. So I have some links to some sources here. There are some studies theorizing that autistic empathy struggles are actually hyper-empathy, being overwhelmed by too much empathic feedback. I also have a link here to my piece, Diagnosis is a Privilege, quote unquote, which is all about the autism registry and the debate about whether autism diagnosis is a privilege. And I make the case here that having the choice about whether to publicly be known as autistic or informally be known as autistic or not is a privilege. And having a diagnosis forced on you without getting to weigh the benefits or the drawbacks of being publicly known, that puts you in a more vulnerable position. Our humanity must be defended along some lines other than our supposed similarity to neurotypicals. We must be held as valuable even when we cannot feel what others expect us to feel, even when we lack some quality that everyone has been told is essential to humanity. Autistics, in all our facets, are human beings, including in our lack. And the research shows that a significant number of us lack either cognitive or affective empathy. I am one of them, and I know I'm not alone. There's a link to a meta-analysis of a bunch of different studies looking at cognitive and affective empathy in autism spectrum disorders. And this is really, so it's a meta-analysis, so they're looking at a ton of different published studies. And what they found was that there are some studies that find autistic people struggling or lacking the cognitive empathy piece, so taking another person's perspective. And then there are also studies showing the affective piece, not feeling people's feelings. So both types of empathy can be lacking for autistics, depending on the study you look at. Carmen is an autistic mother of 3 children in her late 40s. She's been married and divorced 4 times. She tells me that her relationships are a huge source of torment, in part because she finds it so difficult to understand other people's emotions or predict how they're going to behave. There was this one guy that I had it so bad for. I nearly emptied out all my savings because he said he had gotten himself into some terrible debt, and his home was going to be repossessed, she says. But he ran away with it, left his wife alone in the house that she owned. I had no idea she even existed. My teenagers were furious with me, but I did not see it coming. Carmen has concluded that she falls in love with her ideas about another person and her feelings for them, not the reality of them, the person. If I'm attracted to them, and if when we are together I get butterflies, I think, well, they must like me like this too. If I am fighting to keep the relationship and make it work, they must be too. But it isn't true, and I can never understand it. For Carmen, it has been a bitter realization that the great, passionate love stories she thought she was living in were often one-sided and exploitative toward her. But even worse is realizing how little she understands about her loved ones, including her kids. I always assumed my kids would want what I wanted for them and hold my same values. But Carmen's eldest is a free-spirited, polyamorous atheist who doesn't value marriage or faith like her mom does. It is a lot of work reminding myself that her story is her own and that there's parts of her I just do not know. In her gut, Carmen still feels that her daughter must feel as she does. Having only found out that she is autistic in the last few years, Carmen finds some perspective in the fact that she lacks empathy. I thought it made me a bad person at first, or a narcissist, but I try to understand. And so I ask my kids what they are feeling, and even when I can't believe what they want out of life or what they're thinking, I try to listen. Here is a link to my piece arguing that being a narcissist is also not a bad thing, sympathy for the narcissist. But of course, I'm using Carmen's own words, and she's talking about a very real belief and experience of stigma that a lot of autistic people internalize, which is this fear of being mistaken for a person with a personality disorder. And obviously, those two communities overlap a ton. And I would argue that most personality disorders are neurodivergence and trauma and attachment experiences anyway. But she's afraid of being seen in this way as being self-involved. And my argument is that's still a human being. Even if somebody were the portrait of like the most negative version of narcissism, that's still a human being. It is hard, always wondering if she is coming across as cold or selfish, speaking too much about herself when someone else has something to say, not intuiting that the people around her are frustrated or sad, hearing her children claiming they are fine and had an okay day at school, and having no choice but to believe them. Sometimes Carmen wishes she had that magic empathy that everyone talks about so much. Of course, as I have previously written, affective empathy is really just an illusion. Empathetic people's brains merely simulate the emotions that they assume the person in front of them is feeling, based on quick, thin slice observations of the person's body and voice, and the empath's own experiences and biases. This mode of processing emotions is far from perfect, but it is efficient, and it gives the empath a vague yet powerful sense of what is going inside someone else that can't quite be put into words. What is going on inside someone else? Typo there. This is a link to my piece. Empathy is overrated. It is our actions that matter, not how we feel. This is kind of my first real manifesto on empathy being an illusion. So if you haven't read that and you are finding this conversation fascinating or close to home, you probably actually want to start here, or definitely circle back and check it out, because it's definitely related. Some research that I cited in my new book suggests that autistic people process emotions in a meticulous, bottom-up fashion that is incredibly time and energy consuming, and perhaps too detail-oriented to fit how quickly non-autistics express themselves. So it's too much information to process all at once, especially if you are a slower, more detailed processor, which most autistics are. This is consistent with the Autisticat's summary of autism as a neurotype driven by bottom-up processing, in everything from how we filter sensory information to how we complete complex chains of movement. This research is something I really want to write about, but I haven't found a way to yet. There's a lack of smooth motor chaining in autistic people. That a lot of research is suggesting these days, that just for an example, if you tell a neurotypical person to pick up, let's just have this item in front of me. Yeah, let's say you have a cup in front of them and you tell them to pick it up quickly, the entire movement will be pretty quick. And then if you tell them to pick up the cup slowly, the entire chain of movement will be more slow and more gentle. Whereas what we find with autistic people is every action in the motor chain, because this is actually a whole series of movements of the hand and the arm, like in different parts. It's for autistic people, it's not one smooth transition. It's a series of separate components and separate steps. So what autistic people will do when they're told to pick up the cup slowly is they'll still go quickly right until they get to the cup, and then they'll go slowly. So they do not have a single chain of movement that is all intuitively connected for them, we tend to have like individual steps that we're trying to do. I see this in my singing lessons all the time, that like instead of having a flowing connection between the notes, I'm like note, 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 which is not the best way to sing, not the most sustainable way to sing. So this is just a study I wanted to talk about because it's another example of autistic processing being step by step, piece by piece, instead of gestalt, whole chain, whole picture. Once again, it's individual trees instead of forest. And I remember when I was a kid in special ed gym, to teach me how to skip, they had to teach me, like, you take a step and then you hop, and then you take another step and then you hop. And to this day, if I want to skip, I have to mentally do all of that. So that's another example of like detail-oriented motor chaining versus smooth motor chaining. So that's an aside, but something I find very, very fascinating. Rather than gazing at a human face as a whole and knowing what someone is feeling at a glance, autistics typically take in every facial detail separately, slowly piecing together all the details, then trying to label it as something like furious or sad. You can see an example of what this difference looks like in this chart from researcher Vicky Sang's 2018 study using eye tracking technology to compare how autistics and non-autistics respond to emotions on faces. So we have an autistic person processing the face in the graph on the left, and we have a non-autistic person processing the face in the image on the right. And the dots represent places where they looked and number of times they looked. So on the left, the yellow data points show the many places where one autistic participant looked as they processed a photograph of a face. Their gaze covered nearly all the facial territory multiple times, including portions of that face that are not emotionally expressive, such as the hair and neck. They even gazed at the right shoulder a handful of times, as you can see. So they were looking everywhere. They were taking in all the dang old details. In contrast, the image on the right, featuring purple data points, shows where a non-autistic participant gazed. Their eyes swept briskly through the triangle between a person's eyes and nose and mouth a little bit, and not really anywhere else. The non-autistic participant perceived emotions as a big picture, not a series of details. They looked in far fewer places on the face than the non-autistic participant did, and for less time, yet accurately concluded that the person they were looking at felt fear. So you can see there are a lot fewer data points here, and the person looked far more quickly at just what are considered to be the more emotionally expressive parts of the face, the eyes. Yeah, Medkip. As I'm about to get into, I still don't get that this is a fear expression. It blows my mind. Even after all the time I've spent reviewing this study, I still can't see fear in the photograph. I have trained myself to recognize what common emotions look like, practice my own expressions in the mirror, and I can pass the reading the mind in the eyes test with high marks, mostly thanks to pattern matching skills that make me very good at multiple choice tests. But I still can't sense what's going on inside another person. Since people like me and Carmen lack the sensitive, yet easily swayed barometer of empathy, we have to make do with words and learned rule sets. I answer questions that were meant to be rhetorical, carefully sift through the textual meaning of people's words, even when the conversation is operating on some more casual and vibes-based level. And though I have a flat affected voice that other people interpret as sarcastic, I usually can't detect sarcasm in someone else. Carmen requires almost constant check-ins and reassurances from her loved ones, because she can't trust in herself to pick up on the emotions they're transmitting. Nor can the non-autistics around her be trusted to communicate exactly what they feel and mean unless she asks. Here's the emotional surveillance piece, actually. I am always asking people, are you mad at me? How are you feeling? Are you okay? Are we okay? She says. My kids hate it. Lots of her former partners have hated it too. But Carmen needs some way to know how others are doing. When a person that I care about is in crisis, I often find myself trying to explain their possible emotions out loud back to them to see if my understanding of things is right. Oh, if she said that to you after so many years of friendship, surely you must have felt betrayed? Question mark. Or, I can understand why you flung your phone across the room during that argument. It sounds like it was so frustrating. People tend to really like this and feel that I understand them, though I cannot, really. It's just a strategy I developed from reading lots of books on how to be an active listener when I was a teen and thought I wanted to be a therapist. If I were to try and read what is on other people's faces, I'd have to do like the Autistics in Sang study did, taking in every scrap of data the face might be offering me and weighing each separate piece of information against the others. The lips are turned up, but the eyes are downcast. Is this person happy or sad? Was the little twitch before they smiled the real emotion? What do I know about how this specific person emotes and what is going on in their life? And I would have to do all of this in real time, while also making sense of the literal text of whatever conversation we are having, and coming up with coherent but also emotionally sensitive responses to every statement within a fraction of a second, and modulating my own face. If I were to fully carry out this process every single time I interacted with someone, I'd never actually get through a full conversation. This is that bottom-up processing piece and how exhausting it is. Not having empathy has meant missing a lot of meaningful social data, accidentally hurting people constantly, and lacking a cornerstone of human connection that many see as foundational to expressing love or even human decency. It has not been easy. It makes me see myself as downright inhuman at times. But like Carmen and so many other low empathy autistics, I've had to try my best to work around it. Here are some of the strategies that autistics use to cope with our lack of empathy. Let me close the blinds here. The sun is in my face. Turn my light on too. Here is another pair of eyes from the Reading the Mind in the Eyes test. It appears to be a white woman gazing directly at the camera, and it's a decisive or confident expression, supposedly. Intense moral scrupulosity. Jacob is in his late 20s and was diagnosed as autistic as a child. He grew up repeatedly being told that he couldn't comprehend other people or socialize normally, and was heavily trained in social skills and emotional reciprocity by a legion of care providers, school psychologists, and therapists. One of the results of all this is a profound mistrust in himself. Jacob says, as a kid, every time I interacted with a non-special ed kid, I could feel all the eyes on me, people holding their breath, waiting for me to screw up. As an adult, every bad date that I had or bad job interview, my parents would always say, well, what did you say wrong? What did you miss? To cope with all his guilt and uncertainty, Jacob sought an anchor in evangelical Christianity. He joined a local megachurch when he was 17 and became obsessive about serving God and always behaving correctly. He distanced himself from friends who drank and smoked weed, threw out all of his favorite books and DVDs that were filled with sinful material, placed harsh browsing blocks on his phone and computer, and policed his thoughts for any inklings of cruelty, criminality, or sex. I needed to know how to be a good person, he explains. And here there were people offering rules on how to be a good person. Autistic people are generally known to be highly consistent in how we apply moral or ethical rules to a wide variety of situations. Very sensitive to perceived rule violations, willing to sacrifice social acceptance in order to express what we value, and a lot of us wind up developing some obsessive-compulsive qualities. There are probably a lot of reasons why this happens, but one of the most frequently suggested ones is that reducing the world to a narrow set of rules helps to make life manageable when you are consistently overwhelmed. If you are a bottom-up processor in a sea of excessive, unpredictable stimuli, knowing what to focus in on helps. For low empathy autistics like Jacob, having a firm set of guiding beliefs to live by can help organize the world. Unlike most other people, he can't take his cues for what is appropriate to do from following what everyone else is doing, because he cannot read most of their nonverbal signals. And because he mostly does not process the world emotionally, he can't develop his own intuition for how to best devote his energy either. He is alexithymic, as well as low in empathy, so he often feels dead inside. So he can't recognize his own emotions very well either. Before becoming religious, this inner emptiness horrified him and made it difficult to function. But his evangelical Christian church promised to show Jacob what life was supposed to be like. It gave him rules and lots to feel bad about. In a way, being religious gave me an explanation for why I felt like such a horrible person, Jacob says. He became obsessive in his study of evangelical teachings. He devoted all of his free time to proselytizing with his church. He stood outside of abortion clinics, harassing women, debated gay rights with outraged students on college campuses. And he was tortured with nightmares about going to hell for the sexual feelings that he couldn't push away. Eventually, it reached a breaking point, and Jacob landed in the hospital for religious guilt-induced self-harm. Today, Jacob is an ex-evangelical activist, trying to reach adrift kids who were preyed upon by the church like he was. He counter-protests against homophobic Christian demonstrations and hands out queer-affirming literature. He gives interviews frequently about his experiences in the church and has spoken out when members of his former congregation, have been accused of money laundering and abuse. He says his life is freer now, but that he's still consumed with fears of being a terrible person. I am trying to make up for the sexist, homophobic hate movement I was a part of, because it is the people on the left that actually care about disabled people like me, and I used to do them a lot of harm, Jacob explains. But even in queer-friendly, left-leaning circles, there are a lot of moral rules to get obsessive about. I feel like I have to feel bad about what I've done, but about so many other things that are wrong on the left, too. I can't buy groceries at the wrong stores. I should be ashamed if I use the wrong words that are too violent or backward. I shouldn't reference this movie or this artist that is associated with somebody bad. Jacob still really wants to make himself a good person, and it seems that memorizing other people's moral rules is the only way to do it. Scooter Frog says, God, this reminds me of myself before doing the 180. I think a lot of autistic people, they get preyed on by cults, high control groups, and also seek refuge in really like dogmatic communities and religious communities, because it tells you here's how you're supposed to behave, and there's a structure to it. And if you really don't know how to relate to other people, it is especially sticky and appealing. Or if you've been told that you don't know how to relate to people, because that's such a huge part of Jacob's experience, is being told through his autism treatment, quote unquote, that he didn't know how to talk to people. Here is another pair of eyes from the Reading the Mind in the Eyes test. It appears to be another white or light skin colored woman with kind of bangs and like fringe, looking at like a slight angle at the camera, and apparently it's an insistent expression. Face Nemesis says, this reminds me of how I feel right now, and then I just feel lost. The part of memorizing online rules. I'm great at memorizing stuff, but it's not getting me anywhere. I hear that, and I think it's worth asking, like, what you are hoping to have happen through memorizing and following all of the rules, because I know I used to be the same way too. I'm really deliberately moving away from that myself, and it comes down to a few things. I used to think I needed to make everybody think I was a decent person. I needed to control every person's impression of me. Otherwise, I would not be safe. If anybody thought I was a bad person, then maybe I actually was, and I was hurting them. And also, ancillary to that, or consequently to that, I would not be safe because then people would attack me or reject me. So, that set of beliefs, if I'm a good enough person, everyone will like me and I'll be safe, is like a false belief, obviously. Not to be too fucking cognitive behavioral therapy about it. But it that strategy I was using was never going to work. And it was not what I actually needed to do to meet my need. And my need there was feelings of social safety. So I started thinking more about who are my friends, who are the people I actually talk to all the time, who do I respect their opinion and respects me and shows up for me, and what do they care about? And even with them, I'm going to have to disagree and fight sometimes. And that is important. That is the final boss, fighting with your friends. But for now, I can just say, well, fuck what these people on the internet think about me. I don't know them. They don't know me. I don't even know if they're being genuine right now. They could be a fucking troll, you know, like they could be somebody who's trying to, like, who, like, we have no relationship. I have no idea who they are. They have no idea who I am. If they think I'm a bad person or I have a bad take, like, why was I seeking belonging there in the first place? That's a big question that I, as a hyper online person, have been asking myself a lot these days because social media is fucked. Why was I ever seeking out belonging from these spaces? I used to be able to find it sometimes, but today, the way the internet is now, you're not going to find like belonging from like public social media. Like, you can make friends with individual people online. You can build relationships that are almost entirely online that are genuine relationships. But if you're seeking reassurance that you're a good person or belonging through like performing goodness or following the rules, it's not gonna work. Medkip says, reminds me of the sentiment, don't take criticism from people you wouldn't take advice from. Right. I like to ask myself, like, would I want that person's life? Like, do I like how that person lives their life? And usually the answer is like, fuck no. Or it's, I don't know. I actually don't know them, so who gives a fuck, you know? Fuck them. So that's one reason why you might be doing this thing of like, here's all the rules. And me, I was a master debater. I was a rhetorician. I say, failing at words. So I knew how to take all of the opinions that were considered appropriate to have and all of the discourse that people were having and use that language to construct a really convincing argument that what I was doing or what I thought was justifiable and convince people that I was a good person. And I was so good at it that I was like living like just like such a constructed like lie, such a waste of time. Like, I do think there is an amount of having to get used to people disliking you. People will dislike you. People already dislike you, and you haven't died yet. And someday you'll die, but it probably won't be because of just that. And so there's so many human beings on the planet. You do not have the capability of thinking about all of them all the time. So fuck them. And of course, there's a big emotional piece to it too. Of like, I'm gonna have an argument with a friend sometimes, and when I move through that and the world doesn't end, then I know I can live through having an argument with a friend. Me and somebody I care about can see something completely differently. And it might be even something that's kind of important to me. Obviously not like being a Nazi or something like that, but like we can have really dramatic differences of opinion on things that matter to us, and we can still live and they can still show up for me. There are people that are still safe to me, and I have control over how I show up in that relationship. To go back to Lena Mel's example, having fake arguments or like having fake boundary setting about silly stuff is a great way to practice this same stuff. Like, if your friend thinks that some kind of art is bad or it's like bad to consume, you can still consume it and see how you feel about it. You know, if somebody says that you shouldn't like do something, you can try doing it and see how you feel. Or you can just ask yourself, do I agree with that? Like, am I doing what I'm doing because I think it's right? Or am I doing it because I'm afraid of what other people are going to think? And some of that starts with doing what you need and believe in doing privately. You don't have to justify yourself to everyone all the time either. You don't have to tell people everything you do and why you do it and why it's morally okay. And as I said earlier, you don't have to be a good person. You don't have to actually be a good person. Like, that isn't a real thing. Like, no human is that. The choices that we make are structured by our economic system, our culture, what's available to us. We do things that are good, bad, and neutral all the fucking time. And you will continue living even if you stop trying so hard to be a good person. And you can even try to just like have a day where you don't care about being a good person, where you don't do the thing that you said you were going to do because you thought it was the right thing to do, but you actually are dreading it. Like you can just be like really selfish for a day or a week and see what happens. And usually, it's kind of reminding me of like intuitive eating in a way. It'll actually kind of stabilize itself. If you let yourself be selfish and amoral, you will come back around to doing plenty of things that are prosocial for people because you'll get bored or lonely, or you'll be delighted by other people in some way and do something that's prosocial. I really think, and this is at the heart of my anarchism, is that people can trust themselves so much more than they think they can. And that people have no reason to go around, most people have no reason to go around like murdering and abusing and being pointlessly cruel to each other. That is actually extremely costly. Like, it is dangerous and exhausting and hard to be a piece of shit to everyone around you. Most people are not going to do that. Even if somebody has no morals, no moral compass, no empathy, doesn't care about other people, completely self-interested, complete narcissist, let's say. Narcissist boogeyman. Even that person, in a majority of cases, is not going to go around just like snapping people's necks and like making people's lives worse, because what do you get out of that? Like, it makes your life worse. It makes it harder for you to walk down the street, go to the grocery store, have a good time on a Friday. Like, life is easier if you're like, kind of respect people's space, don't get in their way, don't pick pointless fights with them, maybe help them out if they are close to you and you get something out of being close to them. Like, people do a lot of pro-social shit for completely self-interested reasons. So take this if it's helpful, dismiss it if it's not. But I think a lot of us get into this like, but I need to do this thing and I need to say it this way, and I heard that if you ever use this phrase, you're a bad person. And you'd like, I posted about one on Tumblr this week, whether if you're white, if you should use the white emojis or the yellow emojis. Like, some people think it's really racist to use the white emojis because why did you go to the trouble of emphasizing that you're white? And other people think it's really racist to use the yellow emojis because why are you saying that you are the race neutral color and not thinking about depicting your race when people of darker skin have to choose their emoji? So you could like have moral OCD over what emojis you use if you like decide that you want to like devote your brain to that. And there's no right answer. Different people have different opinions. So you have to develop your own sense of discernment. It always comes down to discernment too. Like, you have to ask yourself, what do I think is right? I've taken in all these perspectives. I cannot please everyone of every opinion here. Unless you don't use emojis. What do I actually think is right? Or do I think it doesn't fucking matter? Like, do I think this is not like a high priority for racial justice, which is also a legitimate, I think, opinion to have on that particular topic. I think there are probably higher priorities, even if we're just talking about like digital blackface. There are way worse fish to fry than whether you use a yellow emoji or a white emoji. Just as an example of something that's relatively trivial, but also still people have emotions about, and so you could feel like a bad person based on what you do. Like, sometimes you get so sick of driving yourself crazy over this stuff that eventually you kind of break through into a discernment, don't give a fuck self. The easiest route is to just use emoticons. The furry smile is always a winner. You cannot go wrong with the furry smile. Legends only. Moral OCD is a doozy, and growing up living mainly on the internet surely makes it hard. Sure makes it hard to unpack. Yes. Yeah, I'm dealing with it right now for people deciding I must suddenly be a rad femme or like a turf grifter because I use the word detransition to describe myself, instead of them having any curiosity about why that might be that I would use that word. And it still fucking gets to me. It still makes me feel awful. And so then I just have to say to myself, like, why am I putting stock in what a bunch of internet strangers think who aren't even extending the curiosity or the good faith, who already know my track record on like trans feminism, to even like have a question about why I might be doing that, and how maybe I'm not, maybe that word isn't always what they think that word means. Like, just really do sometimes have to just say, well, fuck these people. Like, fuck, like, if they don't care about me, why would I care what they think? You know? And it's like a callus that you have to develop. And sometimes you do just have to check yourself out of the discourse, because I had to ask myself, why do I care what a bunch of strangers think about my own gender journey? Like, if they can't handle that degree of, I hate the word nuance because people use it in weird ways, but like, if they can't handle that amount of like me being an individual person and not a symbol of a presumed ideology based on one identity label, I don't want to talk to them anyway. Like, that's not people whose judgment I respect. Like, at least on this topic. So let them think they're shit. Like, it's obviously not true. Thank you, John Prime. And my next piece coming up next week is about some more detrans stuff, or retrans, whatever you want to call it. It's coming up on 3 months on estrogen / not on testosterone, and I'm just documenting some of the stuff I'm noticing for anyone who's curious about that, which could be people who are on estrogen HRT, people who are detransitioning, people who are non-binary, people who are worried about losing access to hormones in this political landscape. Like, here's what I've noticed so far. I was on T for about 7 years. I'm off it right now. Who knows what the future may hold. Here's what I'm noticing. And, I'm going to keep talking my shit. Because I've done the discernment there to know some people are going to hate this and be triggered by it for their own fucking reasons. Like, they find the prospect of detransitioning so horrifying for themselves that they can't think about somebody else doing it. And, like, I get that, but that's not a reason to attack someone. So they're going to just be mad. Oh, well. Thank you for listening to my rant. Obsessively studying human behavior. My inability to recognize and connect with other people's emotions was part of what drove me to become a social psychologist. By the time I was in high school, it was clear to me that other people were communicating on a wavelength inaudible to me. A classmate would pointedly tell me, "It looks like somebody got a haircut," and I'd respond with a deadpan, "Yes, I did," and then be laughed at. A teacher would take me aside and tell me that one of my classmates was falling behind on their papers, and I'd reply, "Oh, really? That's not good," not understanding I was being told to help. It felt as if I was constantly being thrown a rope and dropping it on the floor. I tried to fill the gaps in my understanding as scientifically as possible by reading a ton of popular psychology books of dubious quality. I became obsessed with documenting and analyzing everything about a person's mannerisms, tone of voice, word choice, and expressions. I studied handwriting analysis, nonverbal gestures, lie detection, attachment strategies, love languages, and active listening. If I were growing up today, I'd be the type of kid to voraciously consume body language and analysts' YouTube videos and brag about being highly sensitive. Instead, I became a Paul Ekman fan. That's the guy that the show Lie to Me is based on, and he did a lot of research on facially detecting lying, which now I would say is bullshit. But at the time, I thought was real. I filled entire journals with assessments of what my classmates were doing and psychological profiles of them. On Monday, Neil was talking animatedly with Carrie. On Friday, he was sullen and show-offish in his clarinet playing, and she mentioned having a date with Tyler. Neil is clearly in love with her. She thinks he's funny, but she is not attracted to him. I spent a lot of time thinking about what motivated specific people that I had basically zero relationship with while I was in the shower, and tested my hypotheses in the classroom. It seems like Ryan is insecure about his clothes. What would he do if I asked him about it? This is very Hannibalian, and not always good behavior, to be clear. I was often rude. Watching the little dramas of their lives play out kept me company and gave my systematizing autistic mind lots to chew on. With time, my obsession developed into a genuine social skill. I learned how to analyze the details that top-down processors took for granted, and found patterns others either couldn't see or knew better than to openly acknowledge. Recently, I was talking to a good friend about his childhood, and I remarked that it was obvious to me that his father had cheated on his mom. I thought my friend had already known this. The separation that happened in my friend's preteen years, the way his mom talks about her ex-husband and checks the phone of all her boyfriends. I had thought parental infidelity was an unspoken, that should say, but was an outspoken but unacknowledged fact about my friend's life. But my friend was floored. He had never looked back on his childhood memories with a critical adult eye. I'd started picking up on unspoken interpersonal cues like these when I was myself a child, and my mother was laid out in her separate bedroom with a perpetual migraine, and condoms were in my dad's dashboard compartment. Thankfully, my friend was grateful that I'd given him a new perspective on his childhood memories. But most people don't want life's most painful subtext to be written into text like this. Carmen has similarly learned to mask her lack of empathy by studying human emotions, like she's cramming for a test. She reads relationship self-help books and social media posts voraciously, hence her anxiety about seeming like a narcissist, and monitors the feelings of her loved ones with an attentiveness bordering on surveillance. I used to read my daughter's diaries, she confesses. She hadn't intended to be controlling. But private records, search engine histories, diaries, and psychology books gave Carmen rare, desperately sought-after social data. And she absorbed it and integrated it into her working models of others as best she could. Unfortunately, trying to understand too much can make you creepy to a lot of people, she says. So this is why I didn't have a whole section on emotional surveillance, I guess because it's kind of peppered in throughout. But this is some of the more ineffective, violating versions of the constantly checking in with someone about how they feel piece that definitely sometimes happens. Here is another set of eyes from the Reading the Mind in the Eye test. I couldn't figure out what this one was. They're looking off to the side, preoccupied. Probably preoccupied. Distracted kind of emotion, I think. Maybe bored. Something like that. Intentional perspective taking. According to psychologists, there are two main types of empathy: affective empathy, the empathy that is felt, and cognitive empathy, the empathy of understanding intellectually why a person feels as they do. Research suggests that autistics can struggle with either or both of them, but generally, perspective taking is the easier empathetic skill to learn. Nora says she's frequently compensated for her inability to feel others' pain by thinking a whole hell of a lot about how emotions have felt to her and how she would feel in someone else's shoes. If somebody tells me that their dog died, I talk about how I felt when my dog died, she says. It shows that I have been there in my own way, and I'm not just saying sorry for your loss and being cliche. Whether or not it is appropriate to talk about one's own experiences when a friend shares a recent misfortune is the subject of countless advice columns and how-to articles, and reams upon reams of social media discourse. Some people believe that to bring up a personal experience is to make another person's trauma about yourself. Others hold that mutual sharing is a common form of neurodivergent intimacy and should never be looked down upon. From my perspective, what matters is how the disclosure is done and the effect that it's had. Did sharing your experience make the other person feel accepted and safe? Or did they feel undermined and competed with for attention? I feel in neurodivergent circles sometimes people overcorrect on this issue because it's certainly true that neurodivergent people talk about their own experiences for a reason in these situations, and it's often an attempt to connect. But just because that's the reason doesn't mean it's always considerate or effective. And sometimes I think it is true that it's not quite time for you to start telling your story yet because a person is actively in crisis and they really need to be heard, or like you're so eager to share your own story that you're interrupting them. So like generally speaking, I think sharing your own experience and disclosure is a very wonderful thing. But I think just because it's like, oh, neurodivergent people do it for a reason doesn't mean it's always like great. There's some degree of consideration for the effect on the other person that is beneficial. What a lot of neuroconforming people miss is why neurodivergent people speak about our own experiences so much. It is an attempt to empathize as literally and cognitively as possible. Sharing about experiences helps emotions to make sense. And some of us desperately need for emotions to be sensible. Because she does not have any affective empathy, the only source for emotional knowledge that Nora has is herself and her own life. Talking about her own experiences helps her to process how others might be feeling in similar situations, and even helps her to forecast her own future feelings, too. I get intellectually that loss makes a person sad, she says. But if I don't really think about it, I don't know what to do. Am I supposed to be sad that the other person is sad? Should I talk about how to make peace with death? Should I pretend to mourn even if I don't know the person who died? I know you're not supposed to say, let me know if you need anything, because it's too vague. But I don't know what the person does need. I'm not them. This is another one of those online rules, right? Don't say, let me know if you need anything. Offer something specific, right? Who has seen an infographic that says exactly that? But that's not always true. Like, none of these rules are true, like, inherently. These are just social, like, technologies people are trying to make up to make relating to one another easier. And every relationship is different. Sometimes you don't know what to offer, or if you offering help is even welcome. So I think while let me know if you need anything is vague and is hard to take someone up on, the rules that we give out are also like, they're still just knee-jerk, like oversimplified rules that are not always going to work either. Giving some examples of things you can do is a good thing. Like, do you want me to drop over a casserole? Do you want me to pet sit? Like, giving some offers. Do you want a body double? Like, you can do that. I think that's, that's often good. But some people get annoyed by that, Medkip says, I love let me know if you need anything, and now I'm going to be worried that other people want me to directly ask what they need. No. Oh no, I just shared a cognito hazard. We'll try to be more present in convos to know which one is more helpful to say ask. Oh no. Medkip, no. I think after everything you've already said today, Medkip, I would say you don't need another thing to worry about, dog. Like it's if you like hearing that, and if it's been working so far, don't worry about what the infographic industrial complex has to say about it. I think, I think let me know if you need anything is not that bad. Like, people are just looking for shit to make content about at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Like, yes, it often helps someone ask for help if you offer a specific thing or give them examples. But like, if that's what you like and it's working for your relationships, yeah. Yeah, like Red Seraph said, something to keep in your pocket if somebody doesn't like the vague answer. Everybody's different. Reducing humans to like rule sets doesn't work, unfortunately. Yargoyle says, wait, infographic industrial complex, I love. Yes, it's a thing. Very much a thing. When she thinks about her own experience of loss, Nora is able to relate to her grieving friends and jump into meaningful action. When my dog died, what I hated most around the house was the silence. So I can send my friends some music to listen to or come over and put something on the TV. Nora says that she tries to place herself into as many unique situations as possible so she can better understand how emotions feel. I find this very charming. She writes poems about what she's witnessed while whitewater rafting, dating, having fights with friends, and taking meditation classes. She travels a lot and speaks to as many people as she can to learn about their perspectives. There are problems with this mode of emotional processing. The less that Nora has in common with someone, the less likely she is to understand their emotions. Everything she has learned is filtered through her own experience, creating a somewhat solipsistic view of the world, like herself is the source of knowledge. Really working to make sure she understands another person's perspective can be draining for everyone involved, or overwhelming. Many people find it invalidating that she doesn't get them right away. I ask a lot of questions, Noor says. Like, what was the relationship like? And how do you feel about that? Most people like talking about themselves, but others find it offensive. Isn't it obvious? How the fuck do you think I feel? Or they think I'm trying to be their therapist. Every question is a bid for new data, a chance to get better at modeling human emotions in the future for Noor. All this effortful perspective taking is a way that she shows that she cares about others. But that doesn't always come through. Got some activity in the chat. Got opinions on the etiquette of offering to do things for people. Lena says, it's not bad to ask, let me know if you need anything. It's just not quite as good as facilitating someone asking for help. But it's not your job to make it as easy as possible for people to do that. Also, like, if someone has sufficient issues with asking for help, asking them specific things isn't going to make it easier on them anyway. Sometimes it helps for, sometimes people want to be freed of having to make decisions during a hard time. Sometimes they don't even know what they need, and then they can just see how they feel when they hear the idea. And so then they might say yes to something they would have never thought to ask for, or that they thought they couldn't ask for. But yeah, it's also not like, there's only so much you can do. A lot of people don't know what they want and won't receive help, and you can't fix that. ECAT says, one time I asked my friend, what's been on your mind instead of how are you? Because I saw an infographic that said you shouldn't ask your disabled friends how they are. And he laughed at me. He was like, do I really seem that contemplative? Oh my God, that's hilarious. We need to end the infographic moral OCD industrial complex. It's making people so, like, don't you hate when somebody hits you with the, like, therapy language thing that makes it actually harder to relate, and you know it's because they're trying so fucking hard to not fuck up, and you can feel the anxiety radiating through the way that they've written their thing, where it's like, hi, I would love to spend some time soon if that feels comfortable and joyful to you, and it's like, dog, just say like I'd much rather get a text that's like, bitch, what are you up to? Because you're not, and that's me. I get overwhelmed if people are emotionally processing like way too much at once. Maybe you prefer the therapy language thing, and that is fine. But I think we have given people a lot of neuroses about, like, I can't ever say this thing because one person was pissed off at their friend and they made an infographic about it, and now we all think that we can't say, like, I'm sorry that you felt XYZ. That's another one that I hate. Like, sometimes it is accurate to say, I'm sorry if you felt blah, because you don't know what the other person felt. So it's not appropriate to say, I'm sorry I violated your boundaries and I did this offensive thing, because you don't know if you did. Like, sometimes you do have to just check in. Like, none of these rules are always true. Grand Chicken Lord says, I usually ask if there's anything I can do to help, but also often add some specific things I can think, if I can think of them. But often I can't. And I add something like, if not, that's okay, because I also don't want them to stress out on having to come up with something. Yeah. Though I think like, it's like a delicate balance of the, like, not quite emotional surveillance thing, but it's like, I think maybe hypervigilance kind of thing, where it's like, of course it's okay. Like, you know what I mean? Like, hopefully they already know it's okay, like, in the relationship. Like, for some autistic people really like having it be as explicit and reassuring as possible, so I don't mean to dunk on that. I just happen to be the type where, like, getting that much, like, if this is okay with you, it's okay if you don't want to do this, you don't want to do that, that, like, makes me more nervous. This goes to show everybody's different. But and I guess, yeah, there probably are some people who get stressed out about how they aren't thinking of a way to ask for help, but that sucks if they feel that way. That's such a burden that nobody needs to have. Like, shit, when you're going through grief, having to worry about thinking of the right thing to ask for because you feel like you need to ask the person for something so they can feel helpful or something, that would be very stressful. Phase Nemesis says, I'm reading a book right now where the couple fights and therapy speaks a little bit, and it made me laugh, and I thought, who speaks this way? Then I realized the author probably does. Yo, the book Middle Spoon is like that. Like, I got a galley of that earlier this year. I think it's out now. It's like a they're trying to make it the polyamorous detransition baby. That's what the publishers think it is. Oh my god, the characters are so insufferable, and I don't know if it's a joke or not. I truly cannot tell because like the one of the characters is basically just straight up like harassing his ex-boyfriend all the time, but he's doing it by sending him these long emails that are like, I really need to process things with you. Here's my feeling about this one moment we had. I've been rethinking this one exchange. I'm sorry that I said this. I should have said that. Maybe did you mean this? Let's process this. Let's do this. And he's like, he's harassing someone who does not want to talk to him, but it's like drenched in all this therapy language and emotional processing. So you like I don't know, some of the blurbs in the book were saying it was like tender and heartrending, and I thought it was like a horror book. Like uh, there's layers to this shit, y'all. Like Grand Chicken Lord says, I would prefer what's on your mind way more to how are you. The former is way easier to answer because I'm not even sure how I am. Like on what time scale? This moment, this week, this year, relative to what? I find see again, very different personal things. I find both like I have no idea. I'm alexithymic as shit. I don't know. Like I'm stressed out the second. Like here's a question I love. Like who's pissing you off lately? Oh my god, I saw that one once in like a TikTok video where like a girl, this younger like black girl was just kind of doing this like soothing, hanging out with a friend kind of POV video, and the question she first asked was like, "Who's getting on your nerves lately?" And I was like, so cathartic. My root chakra opened or something. Like everything dumped out of me. Like I relief shitted on the floor. Like because complaining rules, as the anime sickos would say, complaining kicks ass. And like bonding with someone about what they're pissed off about, that sounds so much more fun than being like, I'm fine. I don't know what to disclose. I don't know how much you actually want to know the answer. Like, oh, love an invitation to gossip and complain. Um, So that's another one for you. I from Leo Herrera. This is like a small talk one that from his cruising guide. Where were you before you came here? That's more like at a party or someone you don't know super well. Question about like what were you doing before you were here? Very grounded, specific. Not asking someone what their job is. Specificity is always the best. Open-ended questions give me anxiety. I just give scripted answers to move on. Yeah, Mel Valence said, I used to be in a book club where we did What's on Your Mind as an opening check-in. Loved it. Grand Chicken Lord said, What's on my mind? Boltzmann brains and quantum immortality. Easy to answer. Yeah, I don't like I guess for me this is just like these being asked if I'm okay, being asked how I am, even being asked what I'm thinking about, those are like masking triggers for me. It's like, uh-oh, someone I must have the mask must have slipped and this person is asking this because I'm acting weird and so now I need to seem normal. Like it's just triggering for me. That's my damage. If somebody asks me how I am, they have not done a violence to me. You know what I mean? Like so it's okay. It's also okay to like ask the wrong question sometimes. To go back to the like no moral OCD thing, like it's okay to ask a question that annoys someone. It is okay to be annoying. It's okay to not vibe. Oh, thank you for the reminder to hydrate. Dat cat. You know I need it. If they asked it with a concerned tone of voice, that would be different. Oh, totally. Is something wrong? Wrongness ensues. Yeah, it's like calm down. Like when somebody tells you to calm down. Now, I am just so like, this is just a landmine for me. Like being asked, how are you? Ugh, I just hate it no matter what the context. But honestly, at the end of the day, that is not the other person's problem to solve. You know? Like, I don't need to make an infographic about why it's bad to ask someone if they're okay. Because for this sample of one neurodivergent person, it's like trauma triggering. You know what I mean? Like, that's my journey. That's my struggle. Yo, everyone, who's been pissing you off lately? Oh, I love that question. But the fucking people on Tumblr who think I'm suddenly like a turf grifter because I use the word detransition for going from NB to trans man to NB again. That be pissing me off. What's pissing me off is the people who use somebody's identity label as a shorthand for them having supposedly reactionary politics. Because this shit happened to asexuals. It happened to fucking like so many different groups. It happened to non-binary people. Like at some point on the internet, a bunch of people just decided that if you have those two identities, you're cringe and like bigoted, and it pisses me off. Not every asexual is some repressive, sex negative for other people, homophobic asshole. And you shouldn't paint them all with that brush. Not every non-binary person is a fucking like like wanting to see access to HRT restricted, like trans misogynist. You know what I mean? Like it's not the person's identity that causes those ideologies. You know what I mean? Like that shit pisses me off when you just assume that you can tell that somebody probably has a worse political ideology than you because they have a certain identity that you think is like cringy. When those ideologies are just like endemic to society. Very telling how all the trans meds moved on to being trans misogynists. Oh yeah, that's what it was always about. Like all the trans meds turns into trans andro bros. It's the same exact people. Very telling. Here is another expression from the Mind in the Eyes test. It's an older man, and it's a panicked expression or fearful. This one's more fearful to me than the other picture. Tough Tooth says, I've been in it since the bisexual, pansexual Tumblr war of 2007, and it's still going, baby. There are people still holding on to that fight. Hate that shit. Hate that shit to death. And people just do it again, this like exclusionary bullshit. They just do it with asexuals, demisexuals, aromantics, non-binary people, people with like a micro identity label. They just assume because somebody has a micro identity label, there's some kind of like toxic genderqueer. And it's like, well, look at the person's behavior instead of deciding that a bunch of identities that are really like not given any room in society, like that those people are the problem. Really, like, come on, be fucking for real. Oh, I love. Maybe we should start the streams with who's pissing you off lately. Somebody remind me next time. Dat Cat says, my new therapist pissed me off the other day. She said she doesn't see my autism, and then proceeded to have me prove my autism to her. And then she referred to herself as neurospicy. She rolled her eyes at me over and over, like, girl. Once again, I am saying ndtherapist.com. Let's actually, now that we're screen sharing, let's go to this website. ndtherapist.com. For some countries covered, the US, Canada, Australia, Scotland, France, Ireland, Netherlands, Aotearoa, Poland, and United Kingdom. You can find yourself a therapist. Aotearoa. I need to practice pronouncing that again. Sorry. There's a directory of a bunch of self-listed. Let's click on therapists. Self-listed, self-identified neurodivergent therapists in various places in the world. So try that, perhaps. Grand Chicken Lord says, it's panicked. He also looks like he could be in the middle of telling a joke he thinks is clever. You're right. Like, people use expressions as punctuation. So that means, like, this means, like, hold on for this, you know? Like, this is all stuff that I manually learned how to do in my masking efforts, that, like, people raise their eyebrows to say, because this on an instinctive level to people signals something dangerous is happening, so it gets attention. So people will make a scared expression to hold suspense while telling a story. Great pull there, Chicken Lord. What was crazy about the bi-pan wars was seeing lesbians tell people that they're biphobic to their faces when they said they were pan. Like, what are we doing? Oh, God. Oh, God. I think just like as a general rule, with very limited exceptions, just what is the point in telling other people how to identify? There are a very limited number of identities where you can say that is not yours to claim to somebody else, such as race faking or somebody faking having ties to a tribe or indigenous nation that they don't. Okay, fine. Yes. Still creates problems for a lot of actual indigenous people to like sometimes be investigating and surveilling them if that's not your journey. But like aside from that, blackface, things like that, like there are very rare instances where telling someone how they should or should not identify does fucking anything to help anyone ever, I think. Like, come on. Ugh. The moralization on the internet. I do think sapiosexual is ableist. And I mean, I think a lot of people's patterns of attraction are ableist. You know what I mean? Like it's being that is the problem. So if somebody identifies as it, it's kind of like, great, fuck you. I'm gonna know you suck. You know what I mean? Like yeah, like the idea of I'm attracted to people based on ability level is inherently ableist. Yes, absolutely. Individual identity does not equal cultural identity. The culture must claim you back. Yes, absolutely. Good to see you, Cassie. Glad you're here. Long time no see. Yes. Yeah, and it's also not having some fucking blood quantum bullshit, which is what a lot of people in the US to this day still think, because it was baked into our legal system of tribal recognition with the explicit goal of having fewer people that would count as indigenous over time. Like, it was a eugenicist goal. Blood quantum was created to like destroy the number of people who could say that they are indigenous over time, and to exclude black indigenous people, and on and on and on. It invoke many ills against indigenous people, but it's not genetic, it's not a race, it's a cultural identity, it's kinship ties and relationship to the land. So like, who are your people, how will they claim you, etc. Deaf culture too, like having a sign name is like given to you. Lena Mel says, I think what people mean when they say they're sapiosexual is that they're attracted to people they find mentally stimulating to interact with, and because of their class background, that means intelligence. Right. Yeah. Like, I don't know the way to communicate, like, you know, like, you need to be like, it all ends up sounding like very like pretentious utility kilt guy shit, to be like, you need to intrigue me or whatever. But like, sure, you need to intrigue me, but that could be a lot of different ways, you know. Grand Chicken Lord says, I'm reminded of the article we talked about on stream a while ago about identity versus class, and how no matter what you identify as, society will put you in a category, usually the third category that acts as punishment for not conforming to the gender binary. Yes. You can't identify yourself into a class position. Like, it is material, it is based on how you are treated, it's based on the resources you have, the status you have, the legal protections you have, and all this stuff that it's not like under your control and that can change potentially. Tough Tooth says, is that not Demi? Oh, I was talking about this with a friend the other day, but I'm like reverse Demi, where I need to fuck the person first to then decide if I'm going to like them. So can someone make a flag for that? That's what my grinder strategy has been. You have to fuck the person first and then decide whether you're gonna try to like them. It's not a romantic, because I'm very romantic, but something. Cassie Goes Queerly says they tried to breed out Maori and it backfired because their cultural values are about an ancestor who is Maori, so they didn't lose their Maori-ness by being half white. And I always find that hilarious. Yes. I take so much, like, I'm so moved and inspired by how successful it seems and how organized, like, Maori, like, just like cultural preservation and fights for legal rights. Like, obviously the big haka that happened earlier this year, right? Yeah, in like winter, spring of this year. Like, it seems like it's really like a very vibrant movement that has really made a lot of significant legal and social gains. And like, I just want that for us on Turtle Island so much. And like, I think what y'all are doing in Aotearoa is like amazing. Um, and you just see it, like, even when I just do interviews over there, just like the acknowledgement, at least, of like indigenous roots of the culture. I know it's still obviously fucking horrible. Like, all the attacks on rights have been horrible this year, but like, the organizing might that is there in solidarity and is so it's so armed like effectively against it. It's amazing. Not that there aren't lots of complex racist shit around it all, of course. Uh, I used to be reverse demi. I used to fuck people to get to know them. Yeah, that's really one of my strats often. Lena Mel says, also, attraction is almost always a combination of physical things and how well you get along with someone. You can't really separate it out to a bunch of neat labels the way people often try to. You also can't even really separate it to gender. Like gender, like, obviously sexual orientation is a useful label, I think, in the sense of, like, exclusionary language. Like lesbians need to be able to say that like men are not on the table for them and that they don't prioritize like men sexually or romantically, and like that's important, like gay people are pressured to be straight, and so having labels that like emphatically deny that is important. Being asexual and being able to emphatically deny the experience of sexual attraction, that is important. But like gender is like just one fucking variable. There's like so much variance within a gender. So like talking about I'm attracted to this entire gender category is like kind of meaningless for a lot of people, especially given the fact that you can't tell from looking at someone what gender they are necessarily. So like there's and this is why I use all kinds of different fucking labels depending on the day. Like I could say I'm bisexual or I could say I'm ace. Like I'm not attracted to everybody equally. You know what I mean? I could say I'm demi, I could say I'm kinky, I could say I'm dom sexual. But that's not but there's still exceptions. Like it's like what are we doing? Talking about like the specific person or the dynamic or actions that I'm interested in, it helps more. The government funding language preservation has been a huge impact on visibility in wider settler culture here. Yeah, and that is something that is so absent on Turtle Island. Yeah, on all of Turtle Island, honestly. I too need to fuck someone first to nullify my free sexuality. Free sexuality. Okay. I need to look that one up. Sexual orientation characterized as sexual attraction to strangers that fades as an emotional bond develops with a person. This is like Perfect Stranger by FKA Twigs. I wish I could play it. I'll just pull up like the screenshot of it. Great video, great song. I like the song is literally about I don't want to know about you. Like you're perfect because you're a stranger. I'm into you because I don't have to know about your history or your shit. So good. My hot take is that separating sexual orientation and gender identity was a mistake. No, you got that. Lesbian is a gender. Faggot is a gender. There's no separating these things for me. Like I don't even really like have a gender. Like the only time gender is interesting to me is in as much as like it plays out in a sexual dynamic. And the gender that I have sexually is very different from the gender I have socially and publicly. Like the way I express it. Yeah. Um Male Valence says, I fell in love with a man who, as far as I know, is gay, and it does bum me out when people think I have no chance. And that's not strictly true. I've known so many like gay men and lesbians that have gotten together and like had kids. So like there's so many. The world is so vast. Who knows? And also, it's especially invalidating to hear that stuff when you're trans or non-binary in some way. And it's like, well, what does gay mean to him? Who knows? Oh, you've entered the posting mech. Medkip says, I don't much want to police people's identities, but I am still very confused that I know people who identify as lesbians while dating men. I don't want to say how they can or can't identify. I just don't understand. You know, I think there's a lot of ways that people approach that label in terms of social identity, community belonging, political identity. I can think of a couple of different reasons why someone might do that. Just like there's lots of reasons why some trans masks identify as lesbians, or non-binary people identify as lesbians. You know, yeah, it's shit's that word encompasses a lot of different things: gender, community, politics. Mac and cheese with legume pasta. I love a protein pasta. Okay, let's keep on going. Overhelping and people pleasing. Jewel is a non binary autistic person who is so afraid that their lack of empathy might make them inconsiderate that they have overcorrected wildly in the opposite direction, forever showering the people around them with praise, attention, acts of service, and gifts. They describe this tendency as compulsive and say it's negatively affected their life and relationships a lot. I bring my roommate all this food home from work, and I buy all the toiletries and cleaning supplies. I clean the bathroom and the living areas. When she travels, I take care of her dog and bird for free, and I buy her a lot of Magic the Gathering card packs and bring her home lots of new games. The reason for this, 10 years ago, Jewel was kicked out of their housing by a roommate that said they were oblivious to the huge messes of food waste and craft supplies that they made. They have been dropped by numerous friend groups for being too annoying and only ever wanting to talk about their own special interests, too, and their family calls them inconsiderate. They never want to risk letting people down again, so they try to make themselves as useful as humanly possible. Not humanely possible. Woo! Don't you wish I had an editor? When I start seeing a girl I like, I'm a real lover girl, Jewel says. I love sending a girl flowers, cookie cakes, little trinkets, showing up to their work with coffee and leaving them notes. I get so excited about them and I just want to show it. But sometimes they get scared. They roll their eyes at this. One girl told me it was a burden and she couldn't live up to my expectations. But I didn't expect anything. I was just being nice. Many autistic people feel taken advantage of in their relationships, and we face a heightened risk of domestic abuse. The primary reason that this happens is because we are structurally vulnerable. Being discriminated against in housing, schooling, and employment at high rates makes us more likely to become dependent upon others and to get stuck living in a living situation we can't escape. There are also social and emotional needs we try to meet by making ourselves useful to others and suppressing our own feelings, too. For low empathy autistics, meaningful connections can be even more difficult than it is for neurodivergent people more generally. Having an emotional understanding with another person is a powerful social lubricant that makes conversation flow more freely and trusting connections form. Even if the empathy both people are feeling for one another is an illusion that's wrong a significant portion of the time. Low empathy autistics can't feel that closeness, real or imagined, that helps others to get comfortable with one another. And we frequently try to close that gap by throwing lots of love, kindness, and service at others. I share with Jewel that I've frequently been guilty of overhelping others in ways that can be perceived as boundary crossing or that just blow up in my face. I once offered to give an $800 cello that I had owned since 4th grade to a complete stranger in a bar because she told me hers had broken and I figured she'd get more use out of it. I've let near strangers crash on my couch for a week and spent so many hours in intensive crisis support with random people who'd messaged me over the internet that I've had severe breakdowns about it. Some of the people that I've helped formed strong attachments to me, and understandably so, because they assumed getting this much care from me meant that I liked them. But often I didn't like them at all. I just knew that human beings were supposed to be helpful to others, even sometimes when they didn't want to be, and I had no feelings for almost anybody, so deciding whom to help was completely arbitrary to me. I hated that I didn't feel the way normal people felt, and I wanted to be a good person. Hearing this, Jewel lets out little peals of laughter and confesses, I don't even like them either. I do not like my roommate. She's a bitch. I just think if I'm good to her, maybe she'll be nice. Half the girls they get all moonied about, Jewel barely knows yet. But that's part of the romance for them. A blank slate is easier to imagine a happy relationship with. With all their experiences of abandonment, what they want is someone who will receive all their attention and annoying qualities, and finally not balk. We have so much love to give, and no way to tell how somebody receives it. Cassie says, holy shit, I never thought I might be low empathy, but this is way too much of a description of my experiences. Well, it's a mind fuck, isn't it? Like, because empathy is an illusion, nobody really has it, right? Like, everybody has these efforts at showing care that may or may not work, depending on the situation. Practicing emotional displays. Here's another pair of eyes from the Reading the Mind in the Eyes test. White guy. It looks like George Bush. Is this George Bush? I did not notice that when I was making this, but it sure looks like George Bush. Crinkly, kind of smiling eyes. Sly, little sly smile, I would say. Practicing emotional displays. Most of the time that Henry is around people, he feels an uncomfortable mixture of anxiety and nothingness. He dissociates heavily from the messages of his own body and avoids looking at other people, whose unreadable faces seem inherently menacing and overwhelming. Every social choice that he makes is careful and deliberate. This means there is very little genuine emotion in anything that he says or does. I am careful to not make the wrong move, he writes in an email to me. Henry is non-speaking a majority of the time, which only makes connecting empathetically more hard. People do not like Henry's wary, careful approach. They notice the gears whirring behind his eyes and wonder what he must be hiding. They feel creeped out when he says he cares, but the words come out sounding robotic and flat, or don't come out at all. Henry has watched how characters make small talk in movies and rehearses exchanges while recording them on his phone so he can rewatch them later. Even when he does have the energy to speak, his words don't usually sound expressive enough, so he chooses instead to text and uses lots of emojis. If he does have to be verbal, he purposefully inserts lots of likes, ums, and uhs into his speech to make himself seem more casual. In a real-time communication between non-autistics, there is presumed to be a feedback loop of emotional responses that keeps everything flowing. Even a millisecond of hesitation can signal confusion or disagreement, which might inspire the person who is talking to clarify or change their tone. When a person is that highly attuned to the social signals another person gives off, they can put on a virtuosically calibrated performance. But if you can't recognize what somebody else is feeling, you'll just keep talking as you were before, or you will trail off, lost in self-doubt over all the potential areas of miscommunication. Henry will recap entire conversations with his other autistic friends over Discord, trying to figure out where he went wrong. Did I come across as bitter? Was I supposed to ask more questions? Usually there is no straightforward answer. He can use a reliable social script and push his lips into a practiced smile and still find that something hasn't landed. It's almost impossible for me to be genuinely happy or sad in the moment with someone because I am so aware of putting on a performance, Henry tells me. But to make up for it, I have gotten good at making someone feel heard. All I have to do is sit there doing nothing, with my eyes locked onto the other person and granting no space for my own emotions to interfere. I am good at turning the focus onto someone else, he continues. People I barely know treat me like a trusted confessor. But when it is my turn to talk, it gets challenging. I'm so sorry that happened to you. I'm so sorry to hear that. Sometimes I mean it literally. I'm just sorry that I heard it. I do not really care, but I care about caring. We commiserate over feeling downright evil at times, wanting others to warm up to us, but feeling so little warmth in return. There are aspects to being autistic that are relatively easy to accept once you put yourself around enough other toy collecting, finger chewing eccentrics and get some support. But a lack of empathy is not one of them. Even within autistic self-advocacy spaces, the expectation is that a person feel the right things, be outraged when we are under attack, cry when a horrific violence is done, erupt into joy when one of our own has a victory. People like Henry and me, we don't feel what good, sensitive humans are supposed to. And so we mask even in unmasking spaces. And we assume that everybody can see there is something that we lack. Mivalent says, when Devin first said he was low empathy. Haha, I find that hard to believe. Me after reading this article. Do I even have empathy? Is empathy real? Empathy isn't real is the point, right? Like altruism. It's an internally fabricated and culturally valued farce. Yes, I think some people are better at participating in the farce than others, surely, or less neurotic about the fact that it is all a farce because they are less socially vulnerable than many autistics are. But all of the things that we're talking about here, they could come from your toxic empath, right? Very easily. A lot of the like projecting that Carmen was doing, a lot of empathetic people do that too. They project and they think that that's empathy. So part of what is distinguishing some of us is just an awareness that it is artificial and a lack of faith in it, combined with a lot of social rejection that has like traumatized us. Here is another pair of eyes from the Reading the Mind and the Eye test. As you might have noticed by this point, they're basically all white people. So that's one of many problems with this test, among other things. These are supposedly wary eyes, but they kind of look like they could be like concerned, compassionate, caring to me. Projecting my worst assumptions. There's this unsettling aspect to having no empathy that I've never seen anyone write about. Because I have no way of telling what other people are thinking or feeling, every single person becomes an extension of my own worst beliefs. I inhabit a lonesome, socially threatening world populated by my own fears. As an educator, I have to remind myself constantly that my students do not possess the knowledge that I have. When I write, I have no idea how much background information to include because I can't see inside the reader's head. In conversations, I catch myself saying, and again, or as you know, because I am continuing a lifelong conversation with myself, and I forget the person in front of me hasn't heard it all before. The worst part is the self-loathing I place into other people's minds. I'm sitting on a partner's bed and they're staring at me. I must have been too boring. Must have sat with too unattractive a posture. I've failed yet again. I ask them what they are looking at. My tone combative. Just looking at you, they say, voice and face awash with feel-good chemicals. I have to arrange the evidence to convince myself of others' feelings. They cancel plans to be with me. They stare at me and say that I am wonderful. I guess they like me. But I do not like me, and mine is the only brain I can understand. In unfamiliar social environments, my anxiety writes over every blank face with expressions of hatred and disgust. I am afraid that everyone is staring at me and getting creeped out by me, and as far as I can tell, they are. I'm always certain that couples are fighting, that I'm picking up on ambient tension that is just about to bubble over. And while sometimes I am correct, it's just as likely that I'm huffing the fumes of my own anxiety. A recent study published in the journal Nature suggests that autistics struggle to differentiate positive and negative emotions in a few crucial ways. Most non-autistics have a positivity bias. They find positive emotions more emotionally resonant and tend to assume that neutral expressions, such as expressions of surprise, signal a positive feeling. When they perceive negative emotions in another person, non-autistics may experience fear and monitor the person's eyes for signs of danger. But when someone seems to be in a good mood around them, they are relaxed and more likely to be sociable. For autistics, both negative and positive emotions in other people are strongly affecting and fear-provoking. Some research suggests that we are worse at recognizing positive emotions than we are at recognizing negative ones. We remain physiologically activated and prepared for conflict, regardless of whether the people around us are happy or unhappy. And we don't relax and freely socialize when people are in a good mood. It seems that many of us are primed to self-protect by assuming the worst of others' emotions and not taking the risk of a close emotional connection. That research certainly tracks with my experience. I've missed enough signs of social danger for one lifetime, unwittingly hurt enough people that I'd prefer to never do it again. It's better to assume every interaction is a test that I've already lost. Prepare for the yelling, pre-write my justifications and desperate apologies, and map all the exits before I enter the room. This is all too real, Sib. Wait, isn't this just the trauma response? If people are explicitly happy, we are paranoid that they are mad at us, or is that the point? Well, that would be my interpretation. Like, all we know, if we believe in science, is I say that, in quotes, is that there is a some of this research suggesting this like negativity bias in autistic people processing emotions. So I'm sure there's a lot of psychiatrists out there who think we just naturally have some kind of like brain difference that makes us see more negative emotions and not see positive ones, or to be threatened by positive ones. But seems more likely to me that it is a trauma response. I have really terrible auditory comprehension. Sorry, I also talk really fast, so my apologies for that. Um, I think your interpretation, Cassie, is how I would interpret it. That it's most likely trauma, and that until we can rule out the possibility of trauma, that we can't say that it's like caused by being autistic. And we also know that like positivity and negativity bias in emotions is very culturally formed. Like Americans have a really strong positivity bias. Like they really want to see positive emotions all the time, and they don't like neutral emotions. They view neutral emotions as negative, and that's not the case in lots of other cultures. So clearly, there's a big social element to it. Lena says, could be both a combination of being worse at parsing others' emotions and being traumatized from people's reactions to wrong reactions to their emotions. Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of a feedback loop of like, you have all of these reasons to panic. And every time you get negatively reacted to, it just reopens that wound. Thank you so much for being here, Slime Mage. Have a good drive. Stay safe. Here is the final bullet point in this piece. Another pair of eyes. This looks like James Dean to me right now. Slater song. He looks just like James Dean. Okay. These eyes also look worried to me. I've gotten a perfect test score on this test before, I swear. The eyes are looking off to the side and looking again like preoccupied, worried. I think it is very telling that people disputed whether this face is wary or sad or content. It really shows you how much of emotional perception is filtering and interpretation. Choosing to care. A lack of empathy has made me something that looks a whole lot like evil, incapable of understanding the emotional needs of others or even letting myself care. I know Lena had a comment about the evil thing. Lena said, I find it fascinating when people worry about being evil because I pretty much never worry about that. Helps less than you'd think. I worry about people attacking me for things instead. Fair. I think that's ultimately what, like, shame, feeling evil, those things are they're social emotions, right? So like they're emotional shorthand of like I'm in social danger. Or I think evil also has a connotation of like something bad is going to happen. Like I'm going to go to hell, I'm going to be punished, I'm going to be found out. I'm going to have my karmic debt. Very moral OCD, very OCD, like dread and social threat. The Red Seraph says, I do think the eye test is impossible. I'm sure people can pass it, but I have to take in whole body language to have any real indication of emotional state. And even then, I'm often guessing wrong. Yeah, body language is like useless to me most of the time. Like, unless it's really transparent, like couple fighting with each other kind of shit. Or like boyfriend not listening to his girlfriend and like looking completely the other way kind of shit. I find it so difficult to remain emotionally present in the moment, connected with people, and invested in those tricky feelings that I find so unpredictable and dangerous. My instinct is to stay in the numb, dissociated world where all that matters are facts and logical precautions, and every internal struggle is meant to be silenced. I'm 8 years old, and my grandmother returns home from a 2-week vacation on Cape Hatteras, her hands full of surf shop mementos. I missed you, she says softly. Did you miss me? I screw my face up and really think on it. I take it very literally. I tried to miss you, Mimi. That's my best attempt at diplomacy. My family laughs and tells the story for years, but in the future, my honest vacuousness will only let people down. I'm 22 years old, and my dearest friend is losing her mind with heartbreak. She's the only person who was there when I was in an abusive relationship and received my looping suicidal emails every day for months with an open heart. But now she is ready to end it all over some dipshit fry cook at her work who treats her badly. I love him so much, she tells me. I think you have borderline personality disorder, I say. I say it because she and I are very similar to one another, and I suspect the same thing about myself. Projecting. Always projecting. Saying what I think is right factually rather than what will soothe. My dear friend stops returning my emails. She is kind enough to tell me that I've really fucked up and hurt her, but things are never the same. It's been 15 years, but I still mourn having a friend like that. Mostly I mourn being able to write emails like the ones I used to send her, and reading her darkly hilarious responses. I think about all the traumas she recounted to me in the years that we wrote each other, and how often I treated them like philosophical problems rather than actual ones. I have learned to feign normal human emotionality better, but I miss what we had. This is a link to my article about being borderline in a lot of ways. It's life, and tragedies and injustices are happening everywhere. Levees burst, buildings crumble, families starve. My country drops bombs that my tax dollars helped pay for. From 2001 till 2025, I am aware of it, and it's never stopping. I watch all of it happening, and I must admit I feel nothing inside. Life has never been any other way, so I am never surprised by it. But the people around me seem shocked anew every time. I take my cues from socially conscious, principled, and highly emotional people who make a big show of how anguished they are. I cried for hours today looking at the footage, they say, whenever there is a school shooting, police killing, natural disaster, or genocide. Where is everyone's humanity? If you can still function while this is going on, there is something deeply wrong with you. But I have only ever known how to function at all costs. I can't imagine things ever being bad enough to justify breaking down. Breaking down only makes things harder. Showing your tender spots just gives the pack a place to bite. I've been looking at dead bodies on the internet since I was 12. I've been aware that the world was cruel since a time my brain doesn't let me remember. I suspect frequently that I really am evil, because when I hear people go on about how sad that they are, the first feeling I can access is anger. Who taught them that their feelings matter? Why do they get to believe that? Today, many psychologists recognize a third type of empathy: empathic concern, or compassion, which involves extending care toward others and being curious about how they feel. Unlike emotional empathy, which requires sharing in another person's feelings and taking them in as your own, all that empathic concern requires is effort. I see a line that passes through my own petty, traumatized numbness and draws back to the causes of mass institutionalizations, police killings, forced starvations, genocides, and every other major ill. These are the abuses of powerful institutions, ones that decide how the world should be, who draw the borders and declare who belongs, who defines what is good, who is evil, who is human and not, who will destroy anyone who does not meet their expectation. I've been told all my life that I should not exist. But so far, the greatest punishment I have faced is just a bit of social exclusion. Half a world away, an entire people has been told that they should not exist, that they never even lived on the land their families tended for generations, and they're having to sift for rancid flour in the dirt. One of the nation states responsible for killing them is also hatching plans to round up and kill people like me, or at least the people like me who are less able to hide it. By this I mean higher support needs autistics. This is a short video of, obviously something where there's been many, many cases in Gaza all year and before that of a child having to sift through dirt to get flour to feed their family. And so I care. I don't cry like the others do, but I choose to show how I care and how I act. I inform myself, I explain things to people that I think can be persuaded, I fill out the spreadsheets, share the links to the encrypted chats, scramble over the police barriers sometimes, and do a lot of telling organizers when I think their intentions are good but their ideas are bad, even if they won't like it. I steer clear of the processing circles. I'm not good at them. I skip the social hours and make training slides instead. I insist that it does not matter what you feel or think, only how you behave. But I still feel that I'm missing some human quality that makes me so unlike those that live and breathe and die for the cause without question, with nary a self-protective instinct. I am nothing but my selfish will to survive. It is in my self-interest to see the collapse of oppressive empires. Yet that is enough. I keep trying to understand, to know what others might be feeling or need, to make sense of this world and how it operates, to be sensible in how I work with it. Though everything feels absolutely meaningless all of the time, I try to find meaning and carry it through, again and again and again. And though I might not ever fully believe it for myself, still I insist that a human life need not earn its right to exist through goodness, that it matters no matter what it feels, or what it isn't capable of. This last link here is that piece from Ismat to Gwendolyn that I was talking about. When I say I do not care for morality, a statement of purpose. Love this piece. This is an answer to a lot of those questions about where does, prosocial behavior come from if you don't have empathy, why morality is not really like the guiding star for making positive things happen in the world. Really, really good. Highly recommend reading it. And this is a great part. How are you not compelled by morality? Great question. With ease and peaceful sleep at night. I simply do not think morality is a worthwhile rallying cause across billions. There are no universal morals, and feathers ruffle anytime I say this. Usually at least 2 people chime in the comments, well, genocide is clearly always wrong, as if I never would have thought of that. If every single person on the earth unilaterally thought genocide was and is untenable, we would not have colonization. We would not have the continued use of slavery in and outside of the imperial cores. We wouldn't have prisons. We would not see incredibly bloody wars attrition. We would guarantee food as a basic right. We certainly would not have had nation-states people seated in lawn chairs to watch the bombardment of civilians and the screams of children. It does not matter that I feel people should think these things. They don't. Nor are these killings happening simply because people like to kill, or morally think that they should, or because they believe it's their right. Those are the byproducts of the point of usefulness. The killing is useful. Theologies, dialectics, and reasonings justifying the slaughter happen after the slaughter is deemed necessary to imperialist expansion and maintenance. They kill primarily because it remains useful to the goals of the imperialist to do so. Why should I bother with morality as a rallying cry when that is not the language of the oppressor? I love this piece. Here's another part where they're talking about people assume because they write the way that they write that they must be very empathic and moral. And they say, but I am not selfless. I prioritize myself in all of these endeavors. Fundamentally, I cannot believe that a traditionally lucrative life will allow me to evade the problems reared by the decay of colonialism. No evasion at all will keep us safe. My moral compass, alarm and disease at the current system, then guides me towards what is practical. There is no freedom in lying to ourselves about our conditions. Freedom comes from the successful overthrow transitioned into popular sovereignty. I think colonial capitalism is the losing team. I believe in my lifetime I will see a people who become awake to their status of slave and become compelled to level playing fields, howsoever they and we deem necessary. I believe it to be in my best interest, short and long term, to move as if I am the victim of genocide rather than one great opportunity away from becoming a genocide heir. I have not one clue if I would feel like this if I were a beautiful, bubbly, white blonde heiress. Maybe then I might be compelled by morality, led away from what is best for me in the short term for the gain of everyone in the long term. In this life, I am of the people directly, and nothing could separate me from that. Liberation is both short and long term. I feel no need to be compelled by morality or the ideal of humanity as we've constructed it under colonialism. I am compelled by my neighbors and family and countrymen and friends. My moral compass, calibrated by my loved ones, guides me towards practicality. Revolution is love inspired. Fucking said a whole word. It's so good. I really don't even need to write what I want to say on this because like that's it. That's pretty much it. And it was so stirring and relieving to see another person say it, that you can be completely like, you recognize, we move against oppressive systems because we have a material interest in it and we think it's the losing team. Like, and that people who do harmful, destructive things aren't doing it specifically because they're immoral, but because it is profitable to do so. That's the more important thing to focus on. Like, that's why this machine keeps a going, you know? So shout out to Ismatu Gwendolyn. Amazing, amazing writer. They write now at threadings.io. So you can subscribe there. They used to have a Substack and they moved off Substack. So yeah, really, really big fan of their writing on this topic. Let's see what we got cooking in the chat, everybody. Let me switch to big face for this wrap down phase of the stream. Let's see what we're talking about. Ambiguity. Let me scroll back up. Okay. Grand Chicken Lord says, a large part of why it took me so long to realize I was autistic was how strongly I reacted to others' emotions, especially often reading other people's negative emotions as much stronger than they were. A lot of that is trauma. Yes. Scooter Frog says about one of the faces, I do not see an emotion in that stare. Yeah. What's that effect in film where showing one image after another image necessarily influences how you interpret the first image, or both images? There's a Tumblr post going around with like showing a face and then a very ambiguous looking face, and then if you paired the face with either a woman, it's like a man staring, a woman, a creme brulee, a tank, a graveyard, how you interpret that man's emotion changes. So that really shows you right there that emotion is already fake. Like, empathy is already fake. Like, even for non-autistic people, how they interpret someone's emotion is based on cues around the facial cues themselves. Ambiguity is a thing in general it feels like most others are unaware of. Like, they say things and don't realize how many different things they could mean, and don't even realize they're making assumptions that others might not make. This is a thing that, like, I have to constantly remind myself as like a really hyperlexic, hyper analytical person. Like, a lot of people can't communicate. Like, they don't have the same tools that I might have, and also the way I'm using tools is like really specific. And if it's not coming through what I'm trying to say, then I also can't communicate. You know what I mean? Like, communication is highly contextual, and so it's way easier to have a conversation when you have a lot of shared assumptions and meanings in common, and it's way harder to do so if you don't. And part of why a conversation is often more efficient than writing is because you have all this nonverbal stuff, but that's only if you're sharing the same nonverbal language to be able to understand each other. So, like, there's this shorthand and this like instinct that you have to kind of read, and the less you have in common, the less you can really recognize. Like, then you're just in the ambiguity. Treating things like philosophical problems rather than real ones is one of my partners in a sentence, which can be charming and it can be annoying sometimes when you're feeling some type of way and they cannot get on that same level with you. Empathic concern is a good term, something I've been thinking about and talking about for a long time, but good to know it as a specific term. You can't choose to feel what someone else is feeling, but you can choose to care and try to do something about it. Yes, and the actions are what ultimately matter. The stream is the genre of entertainment I live for. I'm glad. I love like Philosophy Tube's postmortem streams about her videos, and I love Flawed Peacock's really really fucking long YouTube videos hyper analyzing video game themes in this very like professorial way. And I love these conversations with y'all. It helps me like really like see things on different layers and like strata as well. So very fun. Yes, the Kuleshov effect. That's the film effect. Thank you. Grand Chicken Lord says, for me, morality is something I create for myself to guide what I want my own decisions to be based on, but not something I think would be a useful rallying cry for others. Absolutely. That kind of goes back to the discernment piece, like discerning your own beliefs. Morality is like what my end goal is, but it has nothing to do with how we get there. This is Lena Mel. Cassie says, talking about preferring or verbal language being more efficient, but those of us who prefer written language allows us to return to it and contemplate, which we can't do in real time. Yes. And if you have any processing speed difference, which generally autistics do, it really helps. Thanks for the follow, VV Mage. Thanks for being here. Lena Mel says, on the topic of morality being useless, it pisses me off so much when people say stupid things about foreign policy because we should do that. NATO should establish a no-fly zone over Ukraine. Do you want to start a shooting war with Russia? That's how you start a shooting war with Russia. A lot of talking about the International Criminal Court or NATO or the UN, people do all this acting like it's a moral actor rather than just a way that a handful of colonial states negotiate and symbolically navigate things with each other, and the majority of the world has no say in it, and there's also no consequences when you do violate a rule of any of those countries or those as entities the majority of the time. It's moralizing just really breaks us from being able to see what is actually happening and why, by saying this should happen. It's well, why are you thinking that a nation state cares about people? By definition, what a nation state does is destroy people and control their movement and homogenize their cultures to create the myth of the nation that exists. Nation states shouldn't do anything because they shouldn't exist if we want to talk morals. Grand Chicken Lord says, on the topic of empathy, I honestly don't know where I rank on the affective empathy front because I have such strong social hypervigilance and anxiety, it's hard to separate from that. And also whether or not I feel others' emotions, I care about them. How do you figure out your empathy and how do you differentiate it from, as you said earlier, huffing your own fumes? Everything that you experience comes from your brain. You know what I mean? So is it a helpful tool for you? Well, you probably already know the answer to this. Is being socially hypervigilant and anxious serving you? Probably not. You're probably limited in how much control you have over whether you do some of that. There's probably some things you can do to be a little bit less emotionally hypervigilant, or to feed into that cycle at least, right? But you will never, the ultimate existential horror is you will never know what is inside another person. You will never know that. You will never actually fully connect with another person. We are only united in our reaching for each other and not ever quite making it. But it's still beautiful that we reach, is what I think. We all, feeling alienated is the human condition. Not being able to understand another person's experience is the human condition. We barely can even understand our own fucking experience from day to day, So I think it comes down to what seems to be working for you? What makes your relationships more smooth, more pleasurable? What helps you feel closer? What do you need to feel closer? What do you need to feel more secure? And those are probably better, more actionable questions, I think, than is this true? Do I really have empathy? Am I really accurately perceiving this situation? Because the short answer is you never are, right? We're never actually inside someone's head. We're just using rule sets, projections, tools to try and elicit a response that we like or benefit from or feel good about. And all you can do is experiment with that. And you'll never actually know in a definitive way. Because even if you're happy and somebody with you is also happy, they could be, and you feel really connected and close, it could still be for some reason other than what you think. And sometimes the things that, and there's a positive side to this too, the things that people love most about you like little quirks, little things you do, you might have no idea about those fucking things. You might have no control over those things. It might not ever have been something you deliberately did. It might be something about you think is annoying. And those might be the things that people actually like the most about you and make them feel the safest around you. You know what I mean? So like there's a positive side to that humility too, that like we actually can't control how we connect with other people or ever know anything really, you know? But we can have like experiences and we can try. And that's like a beautiful thing about the human condition, I think, that we always try. And if we're trying and the other person is trying, that goes a long way. And you'll always still have problems. Like having been in really long-term relationships, you never understand the person. You can be around them every day for years and they'll still be a mystery to you and they'll still change. And that can be beautiful. If you're both trying to, be there for each other. I'm wondering if strong affective empathy combined with a lack of compassion leads to bad things. Like not NIMBYs who would deny resources to homeless people because they imagine it means they won't have to look at someone suffering. I think this is a big thing in like hyper empathetic people, quote unquote, where they'll like not want to see something that makes them sad because it's too draining for them. And so then they actually behave in a really uncompassionate way. Like, I think that is actually a really big thing, especially among like white Americans. White, this is like some white woman toxicity brain stuff where it's like, oh, I can't handle conflict. I can't handle seeing something that makes me sad. Like, I don't like feeling bad. I just need to do what gets it out of my sight. And that means I'll do some of the most heinous shit imaginable just to not feel bad. As Burl Interrupted on Tumblr once said, the desire for a clean conscience is one of the most immoral drives. It's always stuck with me. It's hard to accept never truly fully knowing or being known by others. It is hard to accept. And that doesn't mean you can't love them and they can't love you and that the relationship doesn't mean something. It just means there's mystery. I don't know. And this is something that kind of I think about in like polyamory stuff too. I think it's actually relevant to the piece I'm working on types of insecurity. Like the way you feel about someone might not be the way they feel about you, and that does not have to be a problem. Like a big thing in like a lot of polyamory is like an insecurity is like, do I care more about this person and what they're doing than they care about me? Like, I have this one partner that I really like, and they have a bunch of different partners. Like, is there something pathetic or demanding from me putting so much on them? And like, if it's a problem for you, it's a problem, and that deserves to be addressed. But on an inherent level, there's nothing wrong with, I feel a lot for this person. I think about them all the time, and it makes me happy. And maybe they think about me less, but they still like me and want to spend time with me. Like, sometimes, like, it's like I said, sometimes it's better to not know, or sometimes it's better to not like hold us to the standard of like, we need to be in like perfect emotional lockstep all the time. You know what I mean? Like we don't have to feel the same way about each other, and not every relationship has to be a completely perfect two-way street of matched emotions for it to still be a meaningful and genuine connection. And how we think, and that can be true outside of polyamory too, or like romance, of course. And like making peace with that, I think, does kind of help with some of the jealousy and insecurity. I find that like, why can't I just enjoy that it feels good to think about this person? You know, why do I have to expect them to feel exactly the way I feel? If like I still, at the end of the day, I still get to see them and have a good time with them, and like they show that they care about me. Who cares if it's not exactly the same? Juicy Waters, hello, says, I struggle with realizing that I can't fully grasp or empathize with everything, and that we don't fully understand each other. But there are things about them that I love and makes me feel good being around them. Yeah, like my cat can't love me the way that I love her, but she loves me. Like Um, and loving her is by itself rewarding. You know, like I don't know what Dump Truck thinks about me, but loving him is still a positive thing in my life. So it's great. Oh, I'm not sure what what quote? The desire for a clean conscience is one of the most immoral drives. And that is by burlinterrupted.tumblr.com. Someone I've followed her for a very long time. Grand Chicken Lord says, what drives me insane is seeing other people's selective empathy. Like they care for the story of a single person suffering in their own country more than thousands suffering in another country. Well, yeah, well, that shows you again just morality. This is a whole field in social psychology, moral decision making. People base their morality based on things like proximity, similarity, like how egregious or disgusting something makes them feel, all these different things. Like it's not an objective standard, which is yet another reason to kind of ditch morality, I think. I got some vibing with the polyamory comments from some aromantics and other poly people. VMH says having a partner affirm I can experience no romance while they do, and that's okay. That's really sweet. I am someone's whole ass world while they are one of multiple important people. How do we live with that expectation? That it isn't our responsibility to fix or match it. I mean, yeah, I think that's where one of those places where it is reasonable to tell someone like, I can't be your only support network. Like for me to show up for you, I need you to have other people you can call, even if it's not like you're not in love with anyone else or whatever. You know, like that's from the zine, the suicide body autonomy zine, how to help your friends who want to die maybe not die. Um, that they talk in that zine about how if you're going to help someone in crisis, this is a different situation, but I think it's like relevant that like it's okay to have a condition for someone that says that like I need you to have other people you can lean on. Like you need to figure out who else you're going to lean on when I can't be there, even if it's just in this case a suicide hotline or something. I think also even in unbalanced like romantic relationships, it's fair to say sometimes like you need to have friends, you need to have people to lean on, like you need to figure out something because I cannot do all of that. Again, once you figure disability and like isolation into it, sometimes you like you can't just like snap a finger and make it happen, but like you need what you need. And if that means you can't be in the relationship with the person, then that's also like that's what you got to do, you know. It sucks if it gets to that point, but like yeah. Burl interrupted is a staple. Yeah, disgust is a big basis for morality for a lot of people, especially conservative leaning people. Could you link that zine about friends not dying? That sounds good. Yeah, let me how to help your friends who want to die, maybe not die. From Tiny Lantern. This is good because I have to put a couple links in the chat before we depart for the evening. This is also linked in my supporting the suicidal no matter what article. There's that. And the other thing I will link to today is the Piscord, which is our Discord server for people who watch these streams and also watch the show I do with my friend Maddie, Time Theft Today, which is on hiatus right now. Let's see, insert link, edit invite link, never, never expire. So a lot of people who attend these streams hang out on the Piscord. If you're watching the VOD and you want to type in this URL and visit the Piscord, you are welcome to as well. And it's a ton of disabled, autistic, and queer and trans people. We have channels for talking about media, selfies, video games, pets and plants, biohacking, hacking your own transition and your own healthcare. We have lots of people kind of strategizing, just living through different spoony things. We've had a craft group on there that would meet on. We've had people stream games on there. Um, we talk about sex. We talk about age regression. There's just a lot of really fucking cool people in there. If you've liked the chat today, you've gotten a taste of what it's like. So check it out. And I'm so relieved that it's cool because I really was terrified as fuck to make a Discord server. So I thank you everyone for not being shitty or parasocial. It's really nice, and for being so interesting and fun to talk to. I appreciate it a lot. All right, I'm gonna find a channel to raid because I am out of steam, baby. But thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I really have been enjoying these streams. Really, there's been like really great, like just lots of contributions throughout and lots of stuff to chew on, and I'm so grateful for that. So thank you very much for being here. And thank you also to people on YouTube for watching this. Feel free to leave comments. I really like hearing from YouTube folks. I'm really glad that making my essays in this format has made them into something much bigger than themselves or what I by myself could ever do, and that it's more accessible to people. So I really like hearing from y'all too. Let's see who's streaming right now. It's like a lot of like the animal channels I watch. Okay. Laura K. Buzz, Laura Kate Dale, the author of Uncomfortable Labels, My Life as a Gay Autistic Trans Woman, is streaming right now, playing Yakuza 0 English dub on the Switch 2. So let's start a raid over there. Could say hi to her. Looks like she's oh yeah, this game. I've never played the Yakuza games, but I've heard them. They're silly and fun. So that'll be nice. So y'all be nice to her. Thank you everybody for being here. Next week's piece is about detransition bullshit and like effects I've been noticing so far from stopping tea. And then probably the next one up is going to probably be a typology of insecurities in non-monogamy. That's my hope. I have it outlined, but I don't have it written, so we'll see. But I think that'll be a good conversation. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna send you on over to Laura Kate Dale, LK Buzz, Laura K Buzz, and y'all have a good evening / whatever time it is for you. Bye.